Hold on 1 second. I have the wrong copy here. Calling the meeting to order at 6:50. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Berkeley Heights Board of Education was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. January 6, 2023, notice of the Board of Education meeting schedule was sent to the Star Ledger and the Courier News and was also provided to all schools, PTO presidents, the BHEA president, and posted at the administration building. Copy was also provided to the public library and filed with the municipal clerk. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Business Administrator Board Secretary shall serve as presiding officer pro tempore until election of a president. The law requires the Board of Education to reorganize and affirm the basic structure upon which it will function for the year. The board secretary runs the meeting until the election of the board president, at which time the board president will preside over the meeting. The 2023 election results are as follows. In the annual election held on November 7th, 2023, the following individuals were elected to serve on the Board of Education. Sai Bhagavi Akiri, term limit 3 years, votes 2,189. And Natasha Jolly, term limit 3 years and 2,595 votes. At this time, I'd like to administer the oath of office, each separately, and Mrs. Akiri will be the first. And if you can kindly repeat after me. I, Sai Bhagavi Akiri,
I, Sai Bhargavi Akiri,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New Jersey,
of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith
and that I'll bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the same
to the same
and to the governments established
and to the governments established
in the United States
in the United States
and this state
state
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people.
so help me God.
So help me God.
I, Sai Bhagavi Akiri,
I, Sai Bhargavi Akiri,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I may possess
that I possess
the qualifications
the
prescribed by law
the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office
for the office
of a member
of a member
of a board
of a board
of education,
of education,
and that I am not disqualified
and that I'm not disqualified
as a voter
as a voter
pursuant to
pursuant to
RS
RS
14.
19:4-1, I guess,
That's correct. Nor disqualified
not disqualified
due to conviction of a crime
due to conviction of a crime
or offense
or offense
listed in
listed in
NJ
NJ
S 18A
S18A
12-1,
12-1,
and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
and justly perform
all the duties
all the duties
of that office
of that office
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations and thank you.
Mr. Justin, can I take a picture with my?
Sure.
That would be. Yeah, whatever. Like a thought. Hmm?
Okay.
Ms. Jolly, can you kindly stand? I, Natasha Jolly,
I, Natasha Jolly,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New Jersey,
of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith
and that I will bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the same
to the same
and to the governments established
and to the governments established
in the United States
in the United States
and this state
and this state
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I, Natasha Jolly,
I, Natasha Jolly,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I possess
that I possess
the qualifications prescribed by law
the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office of a member
for the office of a member
of a Board of
of
Education,
a Board of Education,
and that I am not disqualified
and that I am not disqualified
as a voter
as a voter
pursuant to
pursuant to
RS
RS
19:4-1,
19:4-1,
nor disqualified
nor disqualified
due to conviction of a crime
due to conviction of a crime
or offense
or offense
listed in
listed in
NJS
NJS
18A:
18A:12-1,
12-1, and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
and justly perform
all the duties
all the duties
of that office
of that office
according to my best ability,
according to my best ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Mr. Hyman will now take our picture.
At this time, I'd like to have a roll call of our members. Ms. Akiri,
Here.
Ms. Bradford,
Here.
Dr. Forger, Mr. Hyman.
Here.
Ms. Jolly,
Here.
Ms. Khanna,
Here.
Ms. Penna.
Here.
And Ms. Stanley. At this time, I'd like to have nominations for the Board of President. Do I have any nominations?
Yes.
Do I have any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Angela Penna.
Do I have any other nominations for president? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the nominations at this point and take votes for each. Do I have for Ms. Khanna? May I have a vote for Mrs. Khanna from each of the board members? Ms. Akiri,
Yes.
Ms. Bradford,
No.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Hyman,
No.
Mrs. Jolly,
Yes.
Ms. Khanna,
Yes.
Ms. Penna,
No.
and Mrs. Stanley.
No.
All right, we have a 4-4 tie. I'm going to have the nominations for Mrs. Penna. Mrs. Akiri,
No.
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
No.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Jolly,
No.
Mrs. Connor,
No.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
and Mrs. Stanley.
Yes.
We have a 4-4 tie. I'm going to open the floor again for nominations for president.
I nominate Mrs. Khanna. And I'm not sure if there is any discussion offered in terms of why I support Ms. Khanna. So I will just say it. I think she has all the leadership skills necessary to be president. She is calm, rational, professional in her demeanor. Her responses are always balanced. She's an independent thinker. She asks tough questions when needed. And in her leadership skills, she was the one who actually brought forth the idea of board goals at the last reorg meeting. So I think she is a great candidate. And, it's a time for a change in leadership.
Do we have any other nominations?
I nominate Mrs. Angela Penna. Angela has been a fixture in our community. She's been on our PTO as a member and then as president of our PTO. This is her 5th year as a Board of Education member. She's been a committee member. She's been chair of committees. She's been vice president of the Board of Education. Serving this past year as president, she has developed relationships with our town council and our mayor for the benefit of our district. Also with our Mountainside Board of Education, also with our PTO, the staff of the BHEA and the BHAA. She also has worked with our BHEF and our community. She has supported our students and our schools throughout her tenure. And she continues to do that. She also adds continuity and consistency in a year that may need something in that terms and what's coming ahead for our community in the next few years. And I support the nomination of Mrs. Angela Penna.
All right, at this time, we are going to take a roll call vote for Mrs. Connor. Mrs. Akiri,
Yes.
Ms. Bradford,
No.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Hyman,
No.
Mrs. Jolly,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mrs. Penna,
No.
Mrs. Stanley.
Unfortunately, Ms. Khanna's attendance over the last year has been, I think, unprecedented, the amount of absences.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of order. I think that at this point, we're only voting. There's no
I'm sorry,
discussion.
but both people talked when they were voting. Thank you. And so unfortunately, I am not able to vote yes. I will have to vote no.
Okay, we've gone through another tie. I'm going to take the vote for Mrs. Penna. Mrs. Akiri,
No.
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
No.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Jolly,
No.
Mrs. Connor,
No.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
and Mrs. Stanley.
Yes.
All right, we've come to another tie. Per board bylaw 152, in the event of a tie, we repeated this on 2 processes. Until we receive a majority of the vote, we haven't done so yet. If we fail to elect a president at this current time, the county superintendent shall appoint from among the members of the board a president and or vice president board by law from bylaw 151, which provides that the organizational meeting shall be called to order by the board secretary, who shall serve as presiding officer pro tempore until election of a president. Notwithstanding the language of bylaw 152, providing for the president to serve until a successor is elected. So, I don't know. Do we have any other nominees besides the people that were elected at this juncture? Nominated, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, if the attorney is going to speak, can you speak so we could all hear, please?
I just said that he might want to ask if there's any other nominees that any members wish to put forward before reaching the conclusion that there's an impasse.
We have any other nominees besides who we have who's just been nominated?
I don't, but are we past the ability to have conversation, or is that still?
No, we can have
An
a
open-
conversation. Yes.
Okay. All right, I didn't know. I just, as comments go, I just wanted to say, I guess, two things. One, this will be my fourth year, feels a little bit longer, on this board. There have been, in the 3 years, there have been 3 different board presidents. And so a lot of my vote is rooted in consistency and just having someone for the second year. It is not a vote against Dipti so much. I do want to say, and Dipti knows this already, I do think at some point that she would make an excellent board president. And what I responded to her is that I would love us, don't know if it's possible, to find a way to compromise. And if there is a world to do that, and if Dipti would accept a vice president in this year, that would be the compromise that feels great in my brain. Don't know if that's at all possible, but certainly that's something that I would love to throw out to the group, among other things that we would discuss.
I like the idea of a compromise also. I would like to propose of Angela Penna being our president, and from there, a compromise of Mrs. Khanna Dipti being vice president this year, and allowing Mrs. Khanna to have some experience and learning from Mrs. Penna some of the rules of the road here as we go through some activities that are coming up.
I would also like to see a compromise, but my compromise looks a little different. Right? My compromise involves Dipti being president. And consistency is probably one of the reasons why I would say, I think, Mrs. Penna, I thank you for your work effort in being on the board and being vice president and being president. But based on, what I think community has elected us for change, and I think it'll be a good opportunity right now to implement that change.
Unfortunately, I don't believe that Ms. Khanna has enough experience. Over the last year, Mrs. Bradford has achieved her new board certification in her first year. I also achieved my new board certification in our first year. Unfortunately, Dipti has not. And I believe that training is really important when you're taking on these big roles. And as you know, these are very complicated issues that we face, right? They're not easy, they're very difficult, and they're very complex. And as I said before, Dipti Khanna has missed multiple meetings, multiple committee meetings. And I believe that the staff and the board needs to rely on their president. That means they need somebody who is there and who they can lean on. And that's for both the staff and for the board. And unfortunately, our staff cannot lean on Ms. Dipti Khanna. I would love to hear from Dipti Khanna on how she can tell us some of the qualifications she has for this role and how she is prepared this year to take on this role.
I would like to thank Anna for her service. I think this is her second term. But with all due respect, I think we have seen in the last 2 years, none of the questions asked by the community, be it at the board meetings or via emails, were answered. There has been pretty much since 2022, 2023 year, what the community has seen is basically shutting down of avenues for communication. We have a board goals that were passed very recently by this very board, where we have tasked the board and ourselves with improving the communication. And I would like to see us make a compromise where we have Dipti as the president. And so we can, improve on our communication, improve on our board goals. And everybody has a chance. I think experience speaks for itself. It can be from the corporate world or it can from, serving on BHEF and voluntary organizations. So thank you.
The experience of volunteering to be an elected official on the Board of Education is complex. And I know, as I have watched over the 22 years that I was a member of the staff here in Berkeley Heights, the Board of Education function, there are many things that I learned in the past year that has been enlightening in terms of what information can be shared and how it can be shared. I commend Mrs. Penna for her opportunity in her past year as president, that she has opened up lines of communication. Her proposal for board goals and her active engagement with our NJSBA agent, Patty Reese, was it was unique to our district. We have never had this before, and not many districts have these board goals. And the fact that Mrs. Reese's schedule prohibited her from coming any sooner, but we stuck with it. We have it. We have our board goals. They're going to be looked at and they're going to be worked at in terms of our communication with our community. So I commend Mrs. Penna for her communication skills. And I encourage those who are new to the board to really take a look at what the role of a board member is and what we have to do. We do not administer schools, we oversee. We oversee what's going on and we do not step in. We are looking at the planning of our community and the direction of our community. And I think Mrs. Penna has had that in her role as PTO president, in her role as committee chairs, committee members, her role as vice president under Mr. DeQuilla, and her role in the past year as president. We have seen that we have some decisions to make in terms of our superintendent coming up. We have some big decisions in terms of a possible referendum coming up that was sidelined during COVID. These are big decisions for our community, and we need someone who is committed to this and has the time during the day to meet with our staff, with our administrators, with our teachers for presentations. And I believe Mrs. Penna has the flexibility in her job to be able to do that. Evening meetings are not very good for our staff. We cannot ask them to come back at night. But during the day, Mrs. Penna has that ability to reschedule and to be able to meet and take care of the needs of the Board of Education. This is why I support Mrs. Penna as president, and I do support Mrs. Khanna as vice president as she gets to know how this would be advantageous for a future presidency.
Have any other comments? Since we have. Sure.
If I may. So I want to say thank you so much. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to Angela for your service on the Board of Education. I know I know how much effort it is. I also want to take a moment to say thank you to Natasha, Jordan, thank you. Sai, Tom, I appreciate the vote of confidence that you have expressed at this meeting. I do want to address, some of the aspects of the time. All of us here are volunteering our time. We are here sitting at this table because we are committed to moving our district forward. Of course, there are times when meetings are missed because of schedules. That happens to everybody. We are all human.
Yeah.
However, that isn't a disqualifying criteria in my mind for somebody to be able to take the position and lead the district. I'm committed in terms of my time, in terms of my capability, to make sure that we do everything possible to help run our district well. I have the experience from being a volunteer in the community. I have the experience from being in my professional life to prepare me for a leadership role. So I'm thankful for the vote of confidence. Thank you.
What have you done over the last year for this role?
Starting with the trainings, all the mandatory trainings that have prepared us to become board members. I've taken the time to do the residential training for the first training. I have attended several sessions at the NJSBA workshop in order for me to understand better and see firsthand, learn from other board members, learn from the NJSBA members themselves. So I feel prepared. Thank you.
Have you done the bills this year?
If we want to get into the details, and again, the one thing that, and this is what I tell my kids, be respectful in every conversation that you have, irrespective of the tone of the person asking you the question. It's your job to stay on point. You don't need to throw shade at somebody to have a meaningful conversation.
So the question wasn't answered. And it's important, if you're going to take a leadership role, that you have done the work to know our district, right? The bills take a very long time to do, and they are extremely important because you get to see that we have ABA students who go to Stop and Shop, and you get to see the receipts. And then you get to see how much our plumbing costs and how we have to pay for plumbing because someone flushed an e-cigarette down the toilet. And you get to see how much we have to pay when we have a nurse out and how much we have to spend there. So doing the bills is a vital part of being a board member. So in order to take on leadership roles, you have to do things like that. You also need to be able to be part of the hiring process, right? And so this year, right, we had to hire an unprecedented amount of staff, and that required all of us to take time to go into the hiring process. Unfortunately, our staff couldn't trust that you would show up because sometimes you say you're coming and then at the end of the day you say, sorry, I couldn't make it. And therefore, our staff cannot rely on you to come to these hiring sessions. If you want to take a leadership role, you need to be able to get the trust of the staff and the board.
So respecting the integrity of the meeting, of the table, the people sitting here, I'm not going to get into an argument and the petty.
You're asking me to vote for you for president.
Yes, I am. And
So
you-
I think this is an interview, right? So I'm asking you these questions. How are you expecting to be able to take this leadership role?
I think Mrs. Khanna answered that. And in terms of, I truly believe being here at every board meeting, obviously I was not part of the board, so I don't know the back in, the room things that are going on. But as a community member sitting here, it certainly feels that a change is needed. And maybe there were, yes, as you said, a great number of resignations, a great number of staff you had to hire. And I think that is also very telling of the current, leadership that was in place.
I
Right.
don't think it was the leadership necessarily. And I think everyone in their resignation letters said that. Excuse me, this is not a public session at the moment. But I do think, right, that over the past year, there was opportunity for people to step up if they did want to take these positions. And I have not seen that. And the reality is there's only 7 of us, plus Jordan, and that requires a lot of time of volunteers. And yes, we are all volunteers with lives, with families, with health issues. All of us have these things, but yet we were elected to show up to make these big decisions for our community. And that means we need to show up and do these things. And they're hard. They're really hard, right? I get bashed all the time for making these very difficult decisions, but I do it because of the students.
So if this is considered an interview process, I have a very basic and simple question that I had asked Mr. Juskovich. I would like to ask Mrs. Penna if it was her decision to have a board attorney present at every board meeting. Because if I recollect, Back in 2022, we started this practice of having a board attorney present at every meeting. So I would like to know, without a board resolution or a vote, how is the board allowing for a board attorney to be present? And the response given was a board president can invite a board attorney to be present. So, but today is a reorg meeting. We are voting for a president. We do not have a president yet. Under whose invitation is the board attorney present here? Because he's representing the entire board. And I would like to know who actually invited for the board attorney to be present here. Is everybody at this table okay with having a board attorney present?
I'm not sure how that has to do with being a board president.
I'm asking that question was asked to, I think that was a question to Mrs. Penna. I would like to have her answer that. Thank you.
I'm happy to answer that. It has been best practice since the beginning of the year that we had an attorney present. It was at the discretion of the president to ensure that we had an attorney, and we agreed on that. And the practice has been to have an attorney at the meeting throughout the year. I was the board president up until this reorg meeting. The board president, I was still president until the reorg meeting. So the board attorney, as best practice, was invited to this meeting.
Thank you. So are you confirming that you invited the board attorney to be present here?
It was at the discretion of the president, because it is the president who runs the meetings. It was at the discretion of the president that it was decided that we have a board attorney at the meetings. Yes.
So maybe we should basically ask the newly appointed board if we would like the board attorney to be present here for this meeting.
We don't have a president yet. We
We
cannot
don't
do
have this.
anything.
This is
We
not a
cannot do
discussion
anything
until
until we
the
have a board
president has been
president.
appointed.
I would like to ask Mrs. Penna the same question. What have you done in order to prepare for a board presidency for this year?
So I'd also like to say, so thank you to Jordan. Thank you to Gail, Pam, for the support. I believe what's important in a board president is experience and knowledge. And I believe I have that. I have the experience. I have been on the board multiple years. This is my 5th year. I've worked my way, as Mrs. Bradford mentioned, through all the committees. I've been committee chair, I've been vice president, and I've been president. And multiple times in other organizations, I've been president. So I've been through the process. I'm very aware how this works. I understand it, but I think experience and knowledge is very important. I also think commitment's important. And I have proven time and time again that this board is a priority to me. I have made sure I'm at every meetings. I have made sure that all the work is done. I've met with every single board member who needed to meet with me. I have forwarded information. I've followed the chain of command. I have a respectful relationship with the superintendent. I have a respectful relationship with the Ed Foundation. I have a respectful relationship with the mayor and the township president, who I tried to build relationships with. I believe it's very important for the community that the president has that commitment, and I've proven over and over again that I have a commitment. I'd also like to just add to Ms. Jawley's comment. I believe I have the leadership skills. I'm not saying that Ms. Khanna doesn't. I know she has a very important job, but I believe that I have the leadership skills to run this board, and I think I proved it. I also feel like I'm calm. I have been very calm. I've run this meeting. In fact, I brought this meeting to order this year. Last year, there was a little bit of chaos. This meeting has been respectful this year to a degree. So I do believe that I have managed to do a lot of things in this year. I pushed for board goals. It was suggested, I pushed forward with it, and I kept with it. And I had multiple conversations with the New Jersey School Board rep, and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed to make it happen. I spent my time making sure that the board had self-evaluations done, and I made sure that we followed through with the goals. I think commitment is an extremely important part, and I am committed and have been committed, and I will continue to be committed. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll just respond. So Ms. Penna, I don't think anyone is questioning your commitment or, the work that you have done here. what my rationale is for supporting Mrs. Khanna is I guess, the direction that the district has gone to under the leadership of the prior administration when you were vice president, under this, administration as with you as president. We've had a record number of resignations and, and specifically, I think of Mrs. Corley Ann Han. Oh, sorry, I'm butchering her name. But when she resigned and the message that she had to the board, and the message that she had to the superintendent. This is all, so I'm not questioning your commitment. I'm not questioning your experience. You have a quite, lengthy resume of volunteer commitments and various positions held. But I do strongly feel that it is time that this district move in a different direction. And sometimes a change in leadership is what's needed to get that done.
Agnes?
So
this-
we have all volunteered. I volunteered locally at the rescue squad. I volunteered for international agencies. We all have held different positions, leadership positions, and we are not denying the experience of Mrs. Penna. All we are asking is, in the last 3 years, we've seen shutting down of avenues. Parents, our publicly funded school district is using social media outlets to cheerlead, and we are shutting down the very community which is paying for running of this district and running of those social media accounts to not even comment without a board vote. We have shut down avenues. People don't get answered here. If bringing the board meetings into order means not allowing a resident, hardly 3 residents or 4 residents attend. We don't allow them to come back and speak another 3 minutes. That's not bringing into order. Not allowing parents to have a say on what is being posted online without a board vote is not bringing into order. So I believe it's about time we listen, and I'm not denying the experience, and maybe I'll even consider Penna for a vice president role, but I think it's time to change and right the ship right now. Thank you.
I disagree. I think that our district is headed in a very good direction. I have been part of this community since 1958 and have lived here. The 3rd generation of my family is now attending these schools. I have watched board meetings over the years. I have been a member of the staff for 22 years. Our district is a wonderful, highly qualified district. We are heading in the right direction. The majority of our community is pleased with our district. We are always striving to do better, and we will do better. But I believe that the majority of our community thinks we are heading in the right direction and are pleased with how our students are doing.
At this time, I'd like to look at making if there's no other nominations and we can't decide upon a president, we'll move to a vice presidency, see if we can choose that.
You had nominations, though. You had nominations from Ms. Bradford and a nomination from Ms. Jolly again.
Okay.
To take a vote on. Ms. Jolly.
Okay, well,
Didn't you again nominate Dipti Khanna
Yeah.
for president? In response to Mr. Hyman's comment and Ms. Bradford's nomination of, and Dipti might not be willing to consider vice president, but the nomination of Dipti for Ms. Khanna for vice president and Ms. Penna for president.
I think per procedure, though, we need to close out the president selection and then move on to vice president. So even though it was mentioned in the comments, I don't think it's up for vote at the moment for vice president.
It is by bylaw. Your bylaw provides that any member may place a board member's name in nomination for board president and vice president. The vote would be taken separately, but per your bylaw, you're perfectly able to make a nomination as was done here, and you would just not vote together on that.
I just didn't realize it was an official nomination rather than something that was in comment. That's
Yeah,
all.
I don't think I heard an official nomination, and I think the nominations were still, Mr. Juskovich had asked for nominations for president. There was just a mention and a mere mention in a comment. If the nominations for president are still open, I would like to nominate myself. Thank you.
Do we have any other nominations for president?
I don't know if you want me to formalize it, but I guess I will, I will formalize and nominate Angela Penna for president with the notion that if that were to happen, I would vote for Deputy Khanna for vice president. I know we're going to vote on that separately, but I'll make that motion, I guess, as a combined motion nomination.
Okay, Jordan Hyman.
I would also like to do that motion of Mrs. Penna as president and Mrs. Khanna as vice president.
A little bit more paper. President. So as Ms. Penna, you're saying that you wanted to nominate Ms. Penna as president and Ms. Bradford, I'm sorry, Ms. Penna as president,
Yes,
and you said for vice president?
Mrs. Khanna.
So I have Mr. Hyman and Mr. Bradford making the same nomination, correct?
I think yes. The only thing is I would say is my vote in that order is contingent upon Mrs. Penna being named president here or at whatever point that would happen.
Yes, my nomination is also contingent upon that.
There would,
I'm not sure, I don't know, I'm not sure you're allowed to do contingent nominations. My understanding is we vote on president, then we vote on vice president.
I concur.
They're separate votes.
Yeah.
they would be a separate vote, yes, but according to bylaw 152, you can make that nomination, they just have to be voted separately.
Can you, I'm not familiar with, can you read the whole, can you read the significant part of 152?
I can read it. It says any board member may place a board member's name in nomination for board president and vice president, semicolon. A second on the nomination is not required, period. Election for each office will be conducted by a vote when the nominations for that office are closed. So to your point, Dr. Forger, if the vote, what I heard the board member stating is that they would vote or nominate and vote for one person for vice president if a vote were to prevail upon another member. Now, I hear what you're saying, that they're not, but they're communicating their frame of mind, their statement of intent, their compromise, as Mr. Hyman had purpose of compromise. So you're correct that the vote would have to occur separately, but the intent and the compromise was stated as such. And I don't think that would make it defective vote on each individual candidate nominee.
I would also like to remind my fellow board members that we cannot move forward without a board president. Our hands are tied until we have a board president voted upon. And so I really do encourage all of you to try to make this happen, because we do have a lot of work to do this year. And we have a lot going on in the district. And this is what is best for our students, is that we have a board president so we can move forward. Thanks.
I just want to be clear here. My understanding is Angela continues as president until there's a new one selected. Is that right?
Only till the reorg, I think, Tom.
No,
After today,
after today, no.
your
She would
history.
not be president, no.
Well, there's the policy bylaw 152 states that officers serve for 1 year until their respective successors are elected, which is to the point that Ms. Penna was making to Ms. Curie's comment about the board attorney. So up until today, Ms. Penna was still the board president.
Yeah,
The
but-
confusion is,
but that-
with regard to the language with regard to the organization meeting and the presiding officer being the board secretary until the presiding officer at the meeting until a successor is elected. But at your subsequent meeting, if you did not have a president elected today, at your next board meeting, your policy, your bylaw would provide that you would take a vote amongst yourselves Mr. Juskowitz would still be the presiding officer at the beginning, but only for purposes of having a discussion to seek to nominate a temporary chair of the meeting. Ms. Penna would not chair that
What
meeting.
I'm interested in is in between meetings, what happens? So we leave here. Does she have any authority as president until the next meeting?
No.
Nothing.
So
So
not-
there is nobody,
Correct.
is what you're saying, but the
Well,
sentence you
there's-
read said prevails until a new one is elected. So why doesn't that say she's in until a new one is elected?
The statute also provides NJSA 18A:15-1
Yeah.
has the same language and states that an officer elected for 1 year and until, which goes beyond 1 year, and until their respective successors are elected and shall qualify.
Right.
So there's the policy language and the bylaw language with regard to the operations of the meetings. And with regard to your point about between meetings, I mean, I could research that if you'd like and put a finer point on it to the extent it was necessary. But there's clearly the language in 18A:15-1 that states that an officer elected serves until their respective successors are elected and until, I'm sorry, for 1 year and until their respective successors are elected.
I-
So to your point, there's not been a successor elected as of yet.
I think that statute, I called NJSBA, I called the attorney line at New Jersey School Boards Association for clarification, and they did clarify that Mrs. Penna can be considered a president until the new board organized. So her interpretation of the law to invite you under that discretion was correct. So she was the president only until we all signed the oath. And then me and Mrs. Jolly got elected. I don't think she can preside as a president or take any action in between meetings. That's the interpretation, and I can request New Jersey School Boards Association attorney to write back to us. That was the understanding that I have. And with all due respect, I think we understand the gravity of the situation. What we are trying to communicate is we are very thankful for her service. But in the last 3 to 4 years, and especially since she has been in a leadership position, the community has felt the transparency and accountability has deteriorated. Community has been shut down from communication. So we feel that to right the ship, we need to change leadership. Thank you.
So I do appreciate that, but I actually totally disagree with it. I think that we have seen this board itself be able to communicate more than it has in the past. We actually talked to each other. We actually work together to get things done. It's not just the president doing all the decisions. I know that me and Gail sat down and walked through board goals. And then we were able to come to the meeting. We all talked through board goals. And then we went and we voted on board goals. So we have been working very well together. We also work very well with the community. Angela Penna has enhanced our relationship with the PTO this year, which is something that we desperately needed because we work so closely with them to help make sure that our students get the things that they need for our district. And then she has also reached out to the town council and to the mayor and to make sure that we have those open lines of communications so that maybe in the future we can have another field in our community. So while you say that we have closed doors and we cut off communication, that's not in fact true. And we have done a lot to make sure that we do communicate. And there are a lot of people that do communicate with us in other ways than just coming to a meeting. People don't want to come to a meeting and speak at a mic and then get put online the next day. It's not something people enjoy. And so we do have other lines of communication and we have opened those. We
So-
also, over the past year, added technology and communication committee, which Angela and I worked very hard to get in place last year. And so we did have that committee. We also had Dipti on that committee with us, right? So we have been working very hard to work on this.
So I'll just take it minute to answer that. Yes, there are other avenues instead of coming here and getting to the mic. And I think the main reason a lot of parents and seniors and community members do not come here is first, they get interrupted. Their right to free speech is basically violated when they get interrupted. The questions are never answered. And I personally, as a parent, have written multiple emails, and you're all aware of them, unanswered questions since February of 2022 or 2023. So I am aware of other avenues, and I think you just have to basically take a quick fact check on how many questions have been answered at the board meeting or via email. And talking of technology, we have spent money. We have changed our location from CMS, Columbia Middle School, to GL. The audio here is really not that great. If you sit in the second row or the front row, you can't hear. And based on the decision of two board presidents, we have not activated the remote participation that was promised. And if you look at the minutes from 2022 reorg in new business, Mrs. Penna spoke about Zoom. Do we have remote participation till date? It's 2 years. No. So having a committee, throwing an idea there, shutting it down doesn't help. So I think it's about time to change and answer ourselves honestly if we have been answering the questions of the communities, not just organizations. It's very easy to meet as an elected representative with another elected representative or organization and say, oh, I've been talking to the mayor. What about the common person? What about a parent? Thank you.
At this point in time, I know we've had discussion. There are 2 nominations for Angela Penna and for Mrs. Khanna, for Ms. Penna as president and Ms. Khanna as vice president. And that was put by Mr. Hyman and Mrs. Bradford. I'd like to take a vote on that because,
You also have a nomination for president.
yes. So we'll take the first vote for Mrs. Penna for president, and then we'll do Mrs. Akiri.
I think there was another nomination for Dipti, right? Right now? Jolly renominated. Yes. The first time Dipti nominated herself, second time Mrs. Jolly nominated Dipti for president.
The second time we did vote, though.
Yeah, we did vote.
Oh,
We did
so there's
vote.
no nomination.
Would you like to?
I would like to nominate Mrs. Khanna for this 3rd round of voting for president. For president.
Okay. Okay, we're going to close nominations at this point and take a roll call vote. One, 2, 3. Okay, first, we're going to vote from Ms. Akiri for president. Ms. Akiri?
You
Yes.
take it in the order of the nomination, so.
Yes, it has
Ms.
to be in
Akiri,
the.
Ms. Akiri was first, correct?
She was.
No. I think it was Mrs. Penna. Penna was the first nomination.
I think the first was between Ms. Bradford and Mr. Hyman for Ms. Penna, Ms. Khanna. You wouldn't do Ms. Khanna. I mean, you wouldn't do the vice president.
We can't
until
hear
after the
you,
president.
Mr. Wenzel,
Oh,
if you can.
can't hear me.
speak
I'm
into the
sorry.
mic.
I agree with Ms. Akiri that I thought the nomination first was Ms. Penna and then Ms. Khanna as vice president. And then I thought Ms. Jolly then nominated Ms. Khanna again. And then there was clarification. And then I thought Ms. Akiri said it. That was, I don't know if anyone has a different recollection.
That's fine, but I think the president's vote is first.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So Ms. Akiri will be second for the vote because Mrs. Penna was the first vote with Mrs. Khanna as the VP, correct?
You're not going to go to the VP. and
No,
do
I
all the
know we won't go to
presidents.
the VP.
Okay.
That's correct. And then I just wanted to make sure.
If I was correct, you would go Ms. Penna, Ms. Khanna again, and then Ms. Akiri.
This is all for the president.
President.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, for Mrs. Penna, Mrs. Akiri,
No.
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Dr. Forger,
No.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Ms. Jolly,
No.
Ms. Khanna,
No.
Ms. Penna,
Yes.
and Ms. Stanley.
Yes.
We have a split decision. For Cy for president, Ms. Akiri, correct?
Ms. Khanna.
Ms. Khanna, okay. For Mrs. Khanna, Ms. Akiri,
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford,
No.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Hyman,
No.
Ms. Jolly,
Yes.
Ms. Khanna,
Yes.
Ms. Penna,
No.
Ms. Stanley.
No.
Okay, we have another tie. Third one is for Ms. Akiri. Am I correct? Yes. Just want to make sure. Ms. Akiri,
Yes. But my first preference is still Dipti Khanna.
Ms. Bradford,
Excuse me, I am voting now on president,
that's correct. Ms. Akiri,
Ms. Akiri.
yes.
No.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Hyman,
No.
Ms. Jolly,
Sorry, Cy, no.
Ms. Khanna,
No.
Ms. Penna,
No.
and Mrs. Stanley.
No.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 no, so Ms. Akiri will not be president.
So I call to adjourn the meeting until another time when we can appoint a board president.
No, so just as in the same policy that was read earlier, there is a path.
Excuse me.
There is a path to, if there is a tie, right, the county executive would appoint. There's also, I believe, precedents that if you move on, if you continue, it's a stalemate for the president, you continue for vice president, even if there's a stalemate there, you can still go through the meeting.
With
Right.
myself presiding
Yes, yes.
for the agenda items A through N.
So I don't think at this point is the right time to adjourn the meeting.
Yeah, and also our own district, if you look in the history, there have been tie votes for president and the board secretary, Mrs. Donna Felazola. There was a tie between, I think, Doug Reinstein and Mrs. late Helen Kirsch, where the decision, I think at that point, we didn't allow the receiving district to vote. I think the sending district to vote. So there was a tie, and there has been precedents that ties are perfectly normal, and a board secretary is a certificated, experienced, and I trust in you to run the meeting. So I don't think there is no need to adjourn the meeting at this time. Thank you.
Yes, we did. Yes, did all three.
So I have a question. If we cannot come to a decision, a compromise on president, I do not feel comfortable in voting for vice president if we don't have a president.
I think we follow the agenda that has been published. I think the agenda is governed by state law. So it's not based on person's feelings of how comfortable we are or not. And it's also not our prerogatives to say we can adjourn the meeting. So I think we need to follow the printed agenda that has been submitted according to Open Public Meetings Act. Thank you.
I wanted to ask a question of council. Should we conduct a vice president to move forward? And to call for nominations, I would say yes.
Yeah, you were permitted to proceed to C. And if you're not comfortable for Ms. Bradford, you can vote no, but you're permitted to proceed to seek nominations for vice president. You're not stopped by doing that by virtue of the inability to nominate a president.
I have a question. Is it permissible to just table this resolution, voting on vice president?
I'm sorry, Dr. Ford.
Just table it. Can we do that? I'm just.
You don't
asking.
need to proceed, but you may proceed.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
So can we table it?
With the
Does
vote, I
anybody
guess.
have a preference?
I think given what I've heard so far, it's likely that we'll not elect a vice president either.
We can,
And then a lot of us, well, some of us, maybe one person would prefer to not elect a vice president tonight in the
Well,
absence of a president.
Dr. Forager, is that a motion you're making? Then you can get a second and vote on that.
Ooh. Anytime I can get a second. Okay, I move to table the question of the vice president election.
I second that.
But you do. Sorry. Everyone understands that by tabling it, per the reason you stated that it's unlikely to be successful, it will then be sent to the county superintendent to decide.
Well, that's true, unless we do something else. There's another option, I think, to reconvene within the next 3 days.
Which is why I called an adjournment to reconvene.
There's another option, I think you're allowed, if you have 3 days, you have 3 days if we fail at the reorg meeting to reconvene and try again.
How does the weekend count into that?
How does the weekend count? I think it counts, but I'm not sure.
No,
I don't
I have
think
a
it does.
question, basically. So if you're tabling it, do both the decisions go to the county? I think we haven't even voted. I think if you vote for vice president and there is a tie, that's when it goes to the county.
So
Just
there's a
because we.
motion on the table
Okay,
already.
yeah, okay. So let's do the roll call.
Yes, Ms.
Yes.
Stanley. So at this time,
Can I just clarify to Ms. Akiri's point, that's the statute doesn't provide that you must, it just states that if the board shall fail to elect officers, so it doesn't state how you fail to elect the officers, it then goes to the county superintendent. So it's not as though a vote is a necessary precedent to it going to the county superintendent.
And I would agree. I think that the vote for vice president will be contingent. The president would inform my vote for vice president. So without a president, I don't think I personally would be able to vote for vice president.
I am deeply disappointed in the fact that we are now elected officials to work together as a team for the better of our school district and for our students. And the fact that we cannot compromise on this essential question to get us started on this year is very disappointing to me, but I still am optimistic. I want to reach out to all the members in order to work cooperatively this year, in order to be kind to each other, in order to open lines of communication, in order to move forward for the best interest of our district, our community, and our students.
Ms. Bradford, I agree. And I think that everyone is here for the students, right? Everyone. So it's not just, a select few, and we are all doing what we think is best for the students. Obviously, this is not ideal, but, if we're talking compromise and we're talking, there's two sides to each coin.
I echo Mrs. Jolly's sentiment. And I'm also equally disappointed, Mrs. Bradford, that we can also meet at a compromise. But we want change in leadership. We are all volunteering our time. It's about time that we feel that we all acknowledge each other and not throw shade that we are not here for the community, for the residents, or for the students. Thank you.
Can we, just a question on Tommy mentioned the 3-day thing. Where is that? My understanding from the language here is that if we don't come to a decision, the clock starts on county superintendent, and that's the decision. Is there a place where the 3-day reconvene thing comes from, or?
I think I'll defer to council for that.
Policy 151 states that if the organization meeting cannot take place on the date above by reason of lack of quorum or for any other reason, said meeting shall be held within 3 days thereafter. So you are holding the meeting now. You didn't fail to hold the meeting. And to do it, Dr. Forager suggested you'd all have to agree to do it, that it was worthwhile doing and you wanted to do it. But you could dispute the language as permitting that, considering that you are meeting tonight.
Yeah, I remembered it wrong. Sorry.
Okay, so we'll table the vice president nomination. I had Mr. Forager as a motion and Mrs. Stanley as a second. Dr. Forager, what's your vote?
This is a motion. My motion is to table, so yes.
Mrs. Stanley? Mrs. Akiri?
No.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mr. Hyman?
Yes.
Ms. Jolly?
Yes.
Ms. Khanna?
Yes.
And Ms. Penna?
Yes.
Motion passes.
We're making progress. We agreed on something.
This time,
Mr. Jessup, can I just clarify then? So what is the next step here? Just so we all understand.
I'll be letting the county superintendent know tomorrow morning that we're at an impasse for the president nomination and we've tabled the vice president. So with that being said, that he will be making that decision within his time frame, which as he has stated, I believe is 60 days. He has within 60 days to do so. Hopefully it's sooner.
So he will be making a decision on president and vice president.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
Just want to clarify that.
Okay, at this moment in time, I wanted to recognize board correspondence. I had received 4 correspondence. I had John Miguelis, concerns about the reorganization meeting part 1. Also, a second one from Mr. Miguelis is designed to fail last year's BOE majority created conditions for chaos. I have a third correspondence, which is Laura Cap, 1/4/2004 BOE agenda and her notes. And last is Mr. Miguelis, concerns about reorganization meeting part 2. Those were the correspondences that were submitted to my office.
Anthony, sorry, just one more small clarification. So we'll, once a decision is made, county superintendent on president, then that president will reconvene a vote on vice president? Because we had no nominations for vice president. So how would county superintendent pick someone, I guess is my question. Sorry.
18A 15-1 states that if you fail to select the president and vice president, the county superintendent shall appoint from among the members of the board a president and vice president.
Does the county superintendent have the right to, obviously the right to nominate and appoint, but can he send it back once he decides on the president? Can he say, okay, you guys go figure out vice president? Is that within his purview?
Hello? Okay. He certainly could try. I would state that he could try. I mean, the board can't interminably not have an officer, right? And so the statute is to me clear that the county superintendent has the statutory duty. It says shall appoint when in statutes, when language like shall, that's mandatory. But if within a certain limited time period, there were efforts made to try, I think there's a real emphasis on the board trying to make that decision, and so I think that would be explored as fully as possible. And if it really comes down to it, that there's really no way the board can come to a decision, then I would state this, by statute, the county superintendent would have to make the call.
Let me ask this, if he has not decided, I think our next meeting is January 18th, right? So if he hasn't decided by January 18th, could this come up under old business?
I do not believe so.
No?
this is your opportunity to select in the reorg meeting your officers. And again, looking at the statute, it says that your first regular meeting under the statutory language, each board shall organize, and it states if you don't hold the organization meeting and don't, so I would submit a plain good faith interpretation of the statutory language is the answer to your question would be no. I mean, I could research and see if there's any exception somewhere, but I don't believe there is. I believe the statutory language would say you can't do that.
Where does the 60-day language come from? Is that statutory?
To my knowledge, no, I do not know where, except for from the county superintendent himself, perhaps. That's the duty, in my opinion, based upon the need to operate the school district, is to do it with alacrity, to do it as soon as possible, and to acquire whatever information you need to make that decision.
Okay, thank you.
Comments from the public on any topic. During this portion of the meeting, district residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Education on any item. The board requests that individuals state their name and town of residence or school of attendance for the record. All comments shall be directed to the board, to the business administrator, board secretary, and depending upon the nature and complexity of the question, it may or may not be answered during the meeting by the administration. If so, the response would occur after the public portion of the meeting has concluded. Although the board may not respond to all items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel items are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. Please note that if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board secretary may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from or adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker's statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. Anyone cares to comment, please step up to the mic.
First of all, I'd like to, sorry. I didn't start, get a couple extra seconds back. First, I'd like to congratulate the 2 new board members, welcome the positive change. Was hoping to see it tonight, but clearly not. The impasse seems to be the new way. That's unfortunate for those especially who claim that they work together with others. I have a few important things I'd like to address. As a high-paying taxpayer, like many others, I'm asking that the ridiculous spending of my money and the town's money to continue to pursue unethical ethics claims against former board members who have now been reelected by the community cease immediately. Stop wasting our money. Enough of this. Back to focus on our children and for our staff. The public spoke with the reelection. Are you going to listen? Regarding the recent email from the outgoing superintendent, I would like to ask the board to consider immediate acceptance of resignation tonight. 2 weeks seems appropriate and not hold out for the end of this school year. We have lost significant tenure of educators under her leadership, and our district has declined compared to our neighboring towns and districts. Let's not lose staff or decline more just so a paycheck is received. She was given a premature increase, which she's collected. So if your conscience needs a little padding to make the change now, she's already been paid. Let's make no mistake. We are all here and aware that her intent on leaving isn't something new nor a surprise. Let's move into 2024 without someone who has 1 foot out the door for who knows how long, maybe the last year or longer. Our teachers and our staff need better support. Make the change happen. Regarding the recent replacement, I'm asking you exercise a fully transparent hiring and interview process with any and all candidates. I recommend an interview panel should be comprised of first principals, teachers, parents. Then this should happen first before board members speak with candidates. Come together in a public meeting, discuss and debate the candidates and how you feel about each and why for the public to hear. Again, our tax dollars, my tax dollars, You guys all work for us. The public's asking for this. Few more things. Time to find new attorneys. It's clear our best interest is not what they have and will not be. They clearly advise the entire board to incorrectly file an ethics complaint against another board member and are now making money defending the same thing that they said go ahead and do. Really? Again, my tax dollars, the town's tax dollars. Enough. I look forward to our new board to vote with your conscience, not with who your buddy is you text with. Hold the new and existing administration accountable for our school's performance and fiduciary responsibility of my tax dollars and the town's tax dollars. Thank you and welcome to the new board members.
Tom Chesky. Are you running the meeting, Dr. Varley? So can you can you reset the time? Are you in charge of the clock? Is that part of this whole thing? Okay. Who's in charge of the clock for this? We're allowed 3 minutes, or how does that?
Yes, we're resetting.
Okay. So the one question I just have is that I believe, and I just remembered it now, that a couple of the members here actually have ethics violations held against another board member here, yet they voted on their election. Is that a conflict of interest? So should they have withheld their vote on voting for somebody that they have a current ethics violation with? Are they allowed to vote on that?
I don't have that answer. I've been here.
It's not a back and forth.
Mhm.
Well,
I don't have an answer.
no answer? You're not, can we find out? Can somebody get back to me if that's an ethical violation?
That's what I stated in my statement and earlier when I made that if there's nothing that we can't answer, we would get back to you.
Okay, so Mike, just to be clear, the question is that you had multiple members here voting on a board member who they currently are engaged in ethical violations with. Okay,
That's what I wrote down.
yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Dakota. I'm from Berkeley Heights. I have a senior at GL and I have a girl in junior high.
What is your last name?
Dakota Grober.
Grover.
So I'm not as eloquent of a speaker as all these people are here. I don't know your ethics numbers and your lawyer talk and this and that. I can tell you that if all you guys were my kids, you'd be grounded right now. This is ridiculous. Our taxpayer money is paying for this crap show. You guys can't agree on things. And I can tell you, Pam, that there is a huge portion of this community that is not happy. That's why we voted who we voted in. I'm sad they're not all here, but you know why they're not here? You don't let us speak. You don't answer our questions. We email you guys and you just like put it off, whatever. You know, Miss Farley, good luck wherever you're going. Good luck. That's all I can say. And I'm not trying to be like obnoxious or mean, but you guys are supposed to be adults. You're supposed to be grown-ups. Come to the table for the children. I love how you guys throw around, we're here for the children, for the children. You guys do not care about my kids. Nobody has answered my questions about my children. No one has answered my questions about where my taxes are going. Why do I buy a freaking glue stick when I pay $10,000 in taxes? I don't understand why you guys can't grow up, come to the table, put somebody new in, get a fresh start all over, and for goodness sake, listen to the parents. Do you not see that we're upset? I don't know any of you. I don't have an odd or a like or dislike against any of you guys. Do you understand that? I am here for my kid. I have so many other things that I'd like to do with my life right now than sit here and watch all of you grown-ups bicker back and forth about number 152,575. Give me a break. I could have told you a half hour ago nobody was going to come to an agreement. But you wasted all of our time. You wasted our taxpayers' time. And you cannot sit here. You cannot sit here and tell me you care about my kid. You do not care about the community or the kid. I don't know who's paying you guys or what the situation is or what your kickback is, but all I can say is make a change. Change. Ask the community. Ask the parents. Sit there with the smirk on your face all you want with a big lawyer degree, but I'm telling you, ask the parents, ask the children, ask the teachers, ask the principals. Who died to make all of you gods? It's like it's like a monarchy where you have control over everything's done to our kids in our school. And I can tell you right now, Miss Barley and everyone else, that this school district has gone plummeted. The scores have plummeted. My daughter's a 4.5 grade point average, and she has been destroyed in the school district. I'm telling you right now, get a grip, grow up, come to the table, and stop telling me that you care about my kids, because you don't. You care about your agendas. You care about whether you're friends or not. And I'm just telling you right now, if you really care about the kids and this damn timer, this is America. We have freedom of speech. And I'm telling you right now, if you really cared, come together, get it together. That's all I have to say.
Good evening, Toya Facey, Berkeley Heights. I'd like to welcome the two new Board of Ed members. I look forward to seeing how the entire Board of Education works together for the betterment of our schools and our children. I would like to thank Dr. Varley for your service to our community. I know being superintendent is not an easy thing, and it definitely isn't an easy thing to do during COVID. I did want to just make a couple of mentions. I have all the bit of confidence in the Board of Ed in terms of making the process transparent, as was done in the past. We had the search consultants who actually came and presented to the public, of which the public was able to comment on it. I know I provided comments, so the process is always transparent as long as you're engaged. The next that I want to kind of just comment on is we are going to have to search for a new superintendent. This display today really brings into question whether or not we're going to get a quality superintendent. We cannot function like this. As parents, we also cannot have certain types of behavior as parents because it does make it very difficult to recruit good, qualified superintendents. So that's one thing for us to consider as our behavior, as well as how we're working as a Board of Ed, because superintendents watch, the world is very small. And as I've said before, we may have to do combat pay to come to a district like Berkeley Heights if we continue this narrative. The other thing that I did want to raise or ask the question is, how we are governed in terms of if this Robert's Rules of Order, because do members of the board have one vote per candidate, or is it one vote? Because some members did vote twice for two different presidents that were nominated. So don't know what the process is, but whether or not there were three nominations in this last round. Some members voted twice for two different people. So I don't know if we need to look at some of the regulation just to see kind of was that permissible. And then the last thing or last question I have is communication between the Board of Ed, who when they're sitting on the dais, any communication that is happening between Board of Ed members and people in the audience, whether or not that is permissible, because I do think that we need to make sure that as everyone is governing up here, that it is done independently and without undue influence. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Seeing I have no more people to step up to the mic, I'm going to close this session at 8:16.
About the voting on the candidates multiple times?
Yes.
With each nomination, there would be another vote taken. And so I'm not sure if I followed you, but you're saying there were multiple nominations
What
for,
what she was saying is, if I understand you correctly, was that there was the third nomination for, one was for Angela, one was for Cy, and one was for Dipty. And some people voted for two different people during each round, voted yes, yes. So just one, she was wondering if
Yes,
it's permissible.
you keep voting until you have, in this board, until you had a majority of the full seated board voting for a candidate. And if you did not receive that, then you would just continue on with additional nominations. And so there was nothing, it was appropriate for the vote for this person, for a person to vote for one candidate on one nomination and another nominee on another nomination if a president had not yet been selected by majority vote of the board. Yes.
At this time, I'd like to vote for resolutions A through N. I'd like to have a first and a second for those resolutions.
Before, sorry, AJ, if I may, before we get into the motions, I have a question. We have a policy that mandates certain agenda items to be on the agenda in a reorg meeting. They're not all
So I think this
in
is in
the,
discussion. I think because he already called it, we have to actually open discussion first.
Can she complete her question?
I
I think there's
No,
a
but I'm
lot of
saying is in
adjournment motions
procedure-
made in. Yeah.
Procedure and
So my-
Robert rules, he asked a motion, and so we have to answer that first.
so my
in
question,
order to
before
have
we
it
get,
Ma'am, that's not correct.
It is
You're certainly allowed to ask a point of information at any time in the meeting.
not
Thank
when
you.
something's open.
It's not. yet been
Anytime you
taken.
can do this, anytime.
We called for it, but she wants to ask a question, so it's permissible.
thank you.
Thank you.
So my question is the reorg meeting. We have a policy that says in the reorg meeting, there are certain items that are required on the agenda. Not all of them are on the agenda as we have it right now. So my question is,
Which ones are you referring to?
give me a moment. Policy 154. Item 6 and item 7. Item 6 says approve the curriculum for all grades. So it starts with the Board of Education shall at the organizational
is curriculum.
meeting. And then it lists a certain amount of agenda items. Designate one or more depositories for school funds. Designate those persons authorized to sign school warrants. Designate the official newspaper. Designate a second newspaper for the publication of board meetings. Designate the day, place, and time for regular meetings of the board. Approve the curriculum for all grades. Readopt existing bylaws and policies for the board's operation and the operation of the school system. Last I checked in the agenda, I believe number 6 and number 7, approve the curriculum for all grades and readopt existing bylaws and policies for the board's operation and the operation of the school system are missing.
And as I stated to you earlier, the reasons why those weren't put on there, because they were readopted earlier this year when Dr. Giordano came on. That was done on August 10th and September 14th.
I'm not disagreeing. Yes, we did it then, but there is a certain policy that mandates what we need to do in this meeting today, and that's missing on the agenda. That was my email earlier today, is we've done what we have, that's fine. But this one states there are some things that shall happen at the organizational meeting, and we have 2 items that are missing.
And that's what my explanation was, because we did that last reorganization meeting, and then we did it again in August and September. I didn't want to put it on for a third time.
So I'm gonna say this one more time, right? It's fine that we did it in August and September. We have something that says we have to do it in this meeting. It's not on the agenda.
Okay, well, what I will do is I will check with the county superintendent, which I did. I'll check with them again, and if we need to put that on, we can put that on for our next board meeting.
Can we make a motion to add that to the agenda so that we are in compliance with our own policy? Because right now, this is not in compliance with our own policy.
I'm going to defer to council. This is a legal opinion that I'm not versed in.
You can make a motion. You have your other policy about adding new business, but
We can't hear you, Mr.
I'm
Winchell,
sorry.
sorry.
You can make a motion. As I understand, the sections you read are largely ceremonial in terms of readopting what's already been adopted. So, I mean, you could do that, but so
Ceremonial or not, it's a part of
I
something
understand,
that needs
yeah.
to happen, right? A lot of.
Well, it's
this
not
is
that it needs to
ceremonial.
happen to keep the district operating. What I hear Mr. Jeskowitz saying, he spoke to the county superintendent, he made a determination based upon it being adopted. So I'm just saying that it can be. I think it's a ceremony. So
It
it's,
doesn't necessarily have to be adopted again since it was done already.
I agree with you that from what you're saying that it's there, but it's not necessary for the operations of the district, but it's in your bylaw and you can make a motion based upon the bylaw.
But under this interpretation that we did it in August, and I don't know, I didn't check that that's true. Under that interpretation, you would never have to do this again. You could always just say, we did this in August 2022. But here we have a new board. Each board is entitled to have its own policies, its own bylaws, its own rules and regulations. Every board is entitled to that. And every board is entitled to look over the curriculum and adopt that. That's why these things are in the policy, because you can have a new board come in that wants to change things. Okay. Doing it in August actually, to me, makes sense for the curriculum because we write curriculum over the summer. But here we have no appointed board attorney. That expired in December. So I think.
It did not. There is a contract for that. And
No,
I'm
I'm sorry. You're mistaken, actually. The contract is only allowing us to appoint a board attorney. They offer their services of certain rate and so on, certain conditions. But it doesn't mean they are the board attorney. That comes later in January. And that's the way it should be because each board is entitled to pick that person.
what we
Okay.
do is those appointments, we've moved them out of there
Yeah.
because in all school districts, due
Yeah.
to the way the election was run previously,
Yeah.
every school district and all those that you're alluding to, those resolutions for
Mhm.
professional services
Yeah.
will be done in June for the next fiscal year, starting July 1.
Right, that's talking about the contract, and that makes sense because you tie contracts to fiscal year that has budget implications. But you tie appointments to boards. Boards are entitled to have their own representatives, their own professionals.
And they
Are-
will be done
that's-
in June. We're moving them there.
Well,
I
we're not-
understand what
we're-
you're saying, but according to how districts are run and
Yeah.
when they are put there,
Yeah.
they're all put in June. And if you'd like to take the consensus of all the other school districts, you will find that being in that particular month, May or June, for the next school year.
And Dr. Forager, the bylaw that Ms. Khanna is referring to does not reference reappointing an attorney at the organization meeting. And school boards provides discussion to the point that Mr. Jeskowitz is making about very little being required except for election of officers and swearing in of new members and designating your bank and your financial accounts and your newspaper. But other than that, that's very little is required at the reorganization meeting. The fiscal operating requirements that Mr. Jeskowitz is talking about is supported. Ms. Akiri cited to school boards, and I know school boards is not authority, but there is no statutory that authority that would support what you're stating about a requirement that the board at the reorganization meeting reappoint an attorney to have an attorney continue to represent the board. You could take action, of course, at subsequent meetings, but that's not necessarily a statement of that's accurate as to what's required for the board to still be represented by its council.
Yeah,
I just,
I'll
sorry,
just review. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I just have a follow-up. So I know, AJ, what you mean by the, I think it was the August meeting where this was on the agenda, last I checked. Or
August 10th, yes.
was that August 10th?
Yes, and the second was on September 14th.
The second was in September 14th. So when you look at the resolution that was passed in the August 10th meeting, that resolution named a legal firm to provide services for the school year at a certain rate, yada, yada, yada. If you look at the reorg meeting that we had in January 2023, there is an explicit resolution that appoints a board attorney. And that was for calendar year 2023. There is another resolution that appoints the alternate board attorney. There is a bond counsel. So there are a number of annual calendar appointments that run different from the contract. Nobody's disputing the contract.
They shouldn't have been done that way. The way business was done prior to that was not correct. And that is what I'm trying to correct going forward. Just as you have the signatures and the things that you had discussed, the signatures on the accounts that have to be approved. I have all those, we're all going to be on the June agenda. So they're approved before the new fiscal year starts July 1.
AJ, I understand that you want to change the calendar, which is fine, but because, so first, this was done not just last year that incorrectly I looked back at 2018, every single reorg meeting that we had these annual appointments. But if you'd like to change the timing of it to be a June, that's fine. However, right now we're at a gap because the appointment expired. The appointment, not the contract, the appointment expired in December of 2023. So if we want to make it correct, we could, appoint an attorney for the 6 months and then come June, restart that, reappoint someone, because right now there is definitely a gap. Just because it's under contract doesn't mean that it is an appointed board attorney.
Until the board appoints another attorney at that point in time, that is when that change will be made.
On June 5th, we approved Cleary, Giacobbe, Alfieri, and Jacobs for the 2023-24 school year. We also approved Porzio, Carolyn Chaudhry, all for the 23-24 school year on the June 5th, 2023 agenda. So we do have we have attorneys for special ed. We have our main board attorney and then our backup board attorney as well for the 23-24 school year.
Right, and that was the contract. And
No,
so
it says they are appointed for legal services 23 and 24. I'm looking at it right now.
right, for legal services, whereas at the reorg meeting, it was specific that they are designated the board attorney. For legal services is different than having a specific appointment for being the board attorney.
And an alternate attorney, if I can add. So at this point, we are not disagreeing the fact that we don't have those contracts with all these attorneys. We do have the contracts that run till June 2024. But starting tomorrow, who does the board go to if they need a legal advice? Today, I think we got an advice, we got an answer from Mrs. Penna that it was at her discretion that Mr. Wenzel is here. So starting tomorrow, who's going to make a decision if you need advice? Which legal firm are you going to call? Are you going to call the Porzio firm or are you going to call the Cleary Giacobbe? We used to, for the last 2 decades, if you go to our annual reorg meeting, we were making an appointment as to who is our designated board attorney and who's an alternate. or who is our board attorney per se. I don't think a board needs an alternate, but we were making those appointments. And if you're going to come here and say this was improper, I think we need to state how is it improper and why were we doing the business as we were for the last 2 decades?
So the elections changed from April to November. And so that is when I think the carryover and the incorrect reorg meeting agenda was continued. Mr. Juskowitz came in, he talked to the county superintendent, he talked to the county BA, and they have set up a Union County, I guess, template for what has to be done at the reorg. That is what is on this agenda. We do have attorneys for this school year. They have been voted on June 3rd, June 5th. I don't have my glasses on. We have an attorney. The reorg agenda is the way that the Union County BAs have decided to do them moving forward since the elections have changed from April to November.
And the templates are also for New Jersey school boards as well.
But
So if I could
the
quickly ask-
school elections have been moved to November since 2009. Are you telling me for 15 years this board has been doing it wrong?
That's correct.
15 years. And you're here 2 months and you're telling us it's wrong.
That's what I'm stating, yes. And if you don't believe me, look at the other school district, your surrounding school districts to see when they approve their professional services.
Yeah, I would really appreciate if you can document it in an email for the board that what we have been doing at Berkeley Heights Public Schools for the last 15 years is wrong. And this is your interpretation. I would like it documented, not just verbal. And I think I called you prior to the board meeting and I requested that. If we are not, so we have 2 legal firms and we don't know who is our preferred designated board attorney versus who is our alternate.
Sorry, can I jump in real quick? Not to put you on a spot, but I believe Mountainside just had their reorg meeting. Curious to know what they've done.
I can't speak for others surrounding, but
No, that's why I'm just,
Yeah.
I mean, you are as surrounding as it gets.
we're one of them. So, let's see. For Mountainside, there's a lot of questions here, but, was something specific you want me to look at or?
Just curious in the reorg agenda.
Yeah.
You know, kind of what we did in Jan 2023. Did you guys move away from doing that in June? Are you guys doing it in January? Kind of what I want to use the word norm here because it seems like this is a Berkeley Heights norm, Berkeley Heights Board of Ed norm for 15 years. And we seem to be just, I find it hard to believe that we were wrong for 15 years without knowing what we were doing.
Can't speak to that. But yeah, I can. But yeah, this is all public. So, I mean, we approved our annual schedule of meetings. We approved our newspapers, primary bank depository, secondary bank depository, recommendation of superintendent appointment of our BA as qualified purchasing agent. So all the same, authorization of BA to approve transfers, all the same, appointments, school safety specialists, our full list of appointments, policies, rules, and agreements, which includes textbooks, written curriculum guides for K through 8, so pre-K through 8, et cetera, et cetera. I'm gonna keep going. Yeah.
Get the picture.
Yeah.
I would like to call for orders of the day. I would like to make a motion to move resolution A through N. All board members.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I am not comfortable going against our own policy, which is 0154 on annual motions and designations. If our resolutions are missing certain key appointments, I'm not comfortable moving along. And I've stated this before, with all due respect, nothing against you personally, Mr. Wenzel. If we have a highly paid attorney firm here, we have our bylaw. And we're talking about residents here. This is how the business has been done in Berkeley Heights. There is ambiguity as to annual appointments. There are some missing items that are own policies. And I'm actually, who was the policy committee chair last year?
Robert Chanchuli.
And the members were Mrs. Bradford and Tom, yeah. So this is written in our own policy and we are not following it. So I don't understand the reason for having this in our policies. Thank you.
With that being said,
I just another comment. So 8 through and so one other thing that, well, I guess we talked about the readoption of the policies, but again, policy 154, number 7 states you readopt existing bylaws. So I am just reiterating that this one is key. And given that there is some ambiguity around it, I'm not objecting to changing how we do things, but I think there's some gaps if you're going to switch from the old reorg schedule to the new one. There are some gaps because you can't just invalidate what was what was the resolutions from the reorg meeting from January. And by doing so with these appointments and such, I think you are invalidating, aside from the attorney, there was a slew of appointments with calendar year 2023 expirations. And so if we want to move to a new calendar, I would propose that we, kind of fill the gap, right? And then come June, reappoint and go through this and then kick off the June cycle or the August cycle, because it's not just the board attorney, there's quite a few that have calendar 2023 expirations.
I will take that into consideration. Mrs. Stanley,
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Ms. Akiri,
No.
Dr. Forager,
No.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Jolly,
No.
Ms. Khanna,
No.
Ms. Penna.
Yes.
So we have a tie, and I believe the tie means that these items do not pass. And we would have to put these on for our next board agenda.
We don't have we don't have
I'd
another
like to
board
just
meeting.
say
Oh, that's
that the
This
board's
is-
schedule is actually on this.
Yeah.
And if this is
and-
not passed, that means we do not have any board dates to have another meeting.
And you voted no to the code of ethics.
And yet voted no to the code of ethics and Robert's
This is-
rules.
You need to at least specify which ones you are voting yes or no to. I know some of you are new, but right, we need to be able to have an annual meeting schedule. So I would like to move again, resolution A through N, all board members. I make a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you.
I think code of ethics may be the most important.
Yeah, it's extremely important and voting no to it
Yes,
is,
you voted no to?
I don't know. I've never seen that.
So I just have a question. Are we gonna have a discussion on each of these, or it's just an up and down vote?
Resolution A through N.
A through N. So we'll take A and vote on that, then B, then C, and so on.
No,
Each
you would
one?
just say which ones you want to say no to.
You can
What?
abstain or say no to certain
Okay. Well,
resolutions.
okay, I
Just as we would during a normal course of the
okay,
meeting.
I just called for a division of the question, and we'll have separate votes on each item.
I agree with Tom. It's easier if we can just go one by one instead of A through N all the way.
There's already a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
And a
The
second.
resolution is for A through N, all board members.
If this is up for discussion, can we discuss about this resolution? Yes. So if the discussion is allowed, I think in the last more than 3 to 4 days, there have been emails sent to the board administrator and to Dr. Worley, citing the very concerns and the policies and the state statutes as to what is missing statutorily in this agenda. This is not new. And I'm sure everybody sitting here is aware that these emails were not just coming from one board member or two newly elected board members. We were told when I called, oh, the concerns are coming from two people who are not yet been sworn in. It's irrespective of who's been sworn in or who's not been sworn in. The state law is state law. Our policies are policies. We need to adhere by them. And we have pointed this out since the day that we got the draft agenda on December 22nd. So there was ample time given and ample notice given that this particular result A to N are missing and not abiding by our own policies.
So Code of Ethics D and E talk to the fact that we cannot make demands of any of our staff and that we need to work as an entire board in order to do anything. We do not have individual rights to demand things of our staff. I was not privy to any of these emails, so if you would like to forward them to me, I would be more than willing to look at them and to work with our staff on making changes. But until then, we need to follow our code of ethics. Also, I would like to move to limit the debate on this as everyone has had a chance to speak on this and move to actually take roll call on these items.
What is your motion exactly on this limitation of debate?
I would, on Robert's Rules of Order, I would like to
Except
move that
except-
debate be limited to, and I can say whatever I want after that. So I would like to limit it to 1 more minute if anybody has a last statement, because all of you have made statements on this already. So I would like to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, I'll respond to that. Any motion to limit debate usually takes a 2/3 vote. I doubt if you're going to get that.
We have a motion on the.
Yeah.
So maybe you should have interrupted
individuals,
the
and
new
if you'd
motion.
like,
What?
with that motion being had. on
Well,
the
is hers
floor,
a main motion or is it secondary?
I guess the
Motion in a second. There was
What?
Mrs.
Technically-
Stanley and Mrs. Penna.
What?
It wasn't stated as such, but you had already had one vote on A through N, and I guess the second motion was instead of rescinding that vote, but to take another vote.
To take
On
another
A-
vote, and if
on
you
A
wanted
through
to
N.
abstain on certain items, particularly if we have a board meeting schedule,
Yeah.
so that can be approved, but if you wanted to not approve N, then you can abstain or say no to that particular resolution.
And the discussion was that we have pointed this out and we have pointed this out to the leadership team, to the superintendent, the chief
We
school
have a
administrator.
motion on the floor.
Yes,
What we're
and I'm
trying to
just-
do is establish now to have a vote. We've heard what you've said,
Yes.
and I've explained what we can do in this instance. So if we can move to have a vote and abstain or vote no for certain resolutions that you feel that you don't want to approve, you
So
can do so.
I'm basically, before I vote, as part of discussion, I'm asking, can the leadership team sitting here, which is Dr. Worley and you, advise as to why our requests to abide by our own policies were ignored?
That question has been asked and answered.
I've answered that twice. It's been brought up and I've given my case of why that it wasn't, because it was done twice already.
So
For
you
those
want
two-
me,
For those two particular items.
So
which
you
was the
want us to-
curricular-
yeah.
That was the curriculum and for the policies.
So basically you want us to abide by a resolution that was approved on by my preceding board members. I just want to clarify. You want me to abide by what? I think as per rules, we can only abide by insurance agreements or contracts that have been made or in place. You can't expect me, a newly elected board member whose main role is to create policy creation, to abide by the bylaws and the policies that were voted by my preceding board. That's the concern here. I hope you can understand that. Thank you.
This is not something new. This is how the board has been doing it. The resolution is passed. If you as a board member don't agree with something on the items, you have perfectly the right to vote no.
Can I also just state, as someone who's suggested in Mountainside and we've made changes, we can change a policy at any point in the year, you know that. So, I mean, whether we vote yes, no, or in between on the bulk batch policies, at any point in time, we have the ability to make amendments to or request changes to any policy in the district.
And there is this mic's not working. The doctrine of like lame duck boards, for example, between an election and the seating of new board members. I mean, boards are going concerns, of course. There's decisions made all the time by predecessor boards. that a new board is not, cannot instantly digest and say that it has to sign on to everything. It comes in to an ongoing district where decisions were made all along to keep the district operating. And were done in accordance with procedure. And as Mr. Hyman just stated, that doesn't mean the new board is bound to them forever, but the new board comes into that district with those operating procedures in effect, and then can take a look at them and decide and deliberate what to do with them. But, so that's.
If I can, AJ, ask a quick question. If we want to make an amendment, say to the calendar, or we want to suggest an amendment, is this a time to do that?
I would say yes.
There's a motion on the floor. There's a motion.
Wait, but we first have
So-
we have a motion on the floor first. We haven't voted on that. You're making suggestions. We'd have to take, or I'd have to take the roll call at this point.
So the motion is to approve all items, yes? That's the motion?
That is correct. And again, I will state that if you want to abstain or vote no for any of those items, whether at the N, A, B, either of those, then you can make that in this motion and state so. So if you want to say that I'm voting from A to L, okay, abstain or say no to one of those specific ones, you can be specific and I will put that vote in for the record.
But that doesn't allow proposing an amendment to something, to a motion, yes? This is a yes, no, or
Well, the
abstain.
motion was put on the floor at this point in time, and we would need to take a vote. And after which, if after that conclusion of that vote, if there's needs to be amendment, but if it passes, there wouldn't be any amendments.
I mean, I guess you can make another motion after.
So just so that we can all keep up here, right? The motion is to pass everything as is, no changes.
Right.
Right?
That is correct.
So if we want to suggest a motion to amend something, ideally, we should say no to this because that doesn't give us the opportunity to make any changes.
Correct.
Because this is yes, no, abstain for everything.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, thank you.
Keep in mind, though, at any time, if the board wants to add a date to the calendar, the board has the right to add a date to the calendar after this meeting. Does that make sense? Like, if the board passes if the board passes the calendar, at the next board meeting, the board can say, hey, listen, we talked about it. We know what we're doing. We want to add another date in June or whatever that is.
I
Make that
get it. I just wanted to make sure that I know what I'm, voting for here. Okay.
We had a similar discussion at the beginning of this year, and it was suggested that we vote on what the schedule is right now. And if we want to make amendments, we can make that an additional or further date. That's how we proceeded at the beginning of the year.
My understanding of that is it's just a yes or no on this resolution that covers A through N. And a no means the entire thing fails. A yes means everything passes.
It's the same as always. You can say yes.
Unless I call out, unless I call out a specific thing.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
as what has been done in
Yeah.
previous board meetings, I know since I've sat here that if there was something from A to J in the finance section
Yeah.
and you wanted to vote nay to it, you would say, I'm voting nay on J only.
And if enough people vote nay on J, then
Then that would
that
pass.
part,
That is
that
correct.
J
That
fails.
specific resolution would not pass.
All right, and then this will be the end of the meeting because we're not going to vote on policies and regulations. Is that right?
That's correct.
And
If need be,
yeah,
as I've talked with the county superintendent, if
Yeah.
need be, if we have to put this back on for the next agenda, yes, but first we would have to vote for this because we have board meeting dates that are
Yeah.
associated with this agenda. In order
Okay.
to continue moving forward, that was what is needed to be done. And the last vote that we had, we're at a 4-4 tie.
Okay.
So we have a motion and we have a second. Can we now get to the vote, please?
Excuse me, it's not open for public comment.
The motion was again.
Don't know.
With the motion being said, Mrs. Stanley,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Penna,
That's to all.
Mrs. Akiri,
S to A, Yes to B. No to C. No to, yes to D. No to E, because designation and signer for school warrants is definitely butting heads with the state law. I don't want to have an unethical vote here because the state law clearly states the designation of signer for school warrants need to be the board secretary, the schools, the CSA, the superintendent and the president. And we are not agreeing with the state law, so I don't want to make an unethical or unlawful vote here. And yes to F, no to G through M. N is an abstain. I have not seen the standard operating procedures and purchase manuals. If I provided a copy or an attachment to review them, I would be more than happy to review and vote on them. Thank you.
So I have C, E, and G through N are your nays.
C is a nay. What else?
E
Yes.
and G through N.
Yes. N is an abstain.
N is an abstain, so
Yes.
G through M is a no and N is an abstain.
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I had the correct vote. Mrs. Bradford,
Yes to all, A through N.
Dr. Forager,
Okay, yes to A. Yes to B. Annual meeting schedule, no. C, no. T, yes. E, no, because that's in violation of our own policies on state law.
that's E you're saying?
E, designation of signer for school warrants. We have a policy actually, 0172, duties of the treasurer of school monies. And the state law 19-4 says that these things have to be signed by the president, the secretary of the board, and the chief school administrator. So we cannot.
The secretary.
Yeah, but we have the president, the secretary of the board, and the chief school administrator. So we have to have the chief school administrator on that list. School depositories, F is yes. G is yes. H is yes. I, payment of bills between board meetings. I'm gonna have to vote no on that. Because that is not in accordance with state law. And that's, I'll give you the reference 18A:19-4.1, that the approvals have to be done at the next meeting, not just the next regular meeting. Okay. J is a yes. K is a transfer authority. That one also has a problem. That's contrary to state law, so I'll have to vote no on that. And it's also against our policy 6422, where it says that the designates have to be the superintendent of schools to approve such transfers as are necessary between meetings of the board. So we're going against our own policy there. That could be an ethical violation, I suppose. Designation of official newspaper, yes, and a revised business office internal controls, standard operating procedures. I'll have to abstain on that. I haven't seen that manual.
So I have for you, I have C, E as in Edward,
Yes,
I as in ice,
Yes.
K, those four are nay,
yes,
and your N is an abstain.
yes.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes, to all, and I'll just note that I is standard. I mean, I know we're not picking up on other districts, but I mean, we in Berkeley Heights and also in Mountainside have often, as a course of business, to allow the district to actually operate day to day, allow for retroactive approval of bills. Pretty common. It's not a violation of state law.
It's payroll. It's payroll.
Payment of, you're talking about I is payment of bills between board meetings?
We still approve it. We just approve it at the next
Right.
meeting, at the next full meeting. So we're
Yeah,
just
but
giving
the-
the
but
ability
the-
to pay the
but-
teachers who educate the kids
Yes.
during the 30 days from the next.
Yes, Jordan, I know what you're
Yeah.
saying, but
I'm
the
not sure you do.
problem is with the resolution. It's worded incorrectly. Okay, because the state law is it has to be done at the next meeting. not the next regular meeting. So I would, if I had an opportunity, I would vote to, if I had an opportunity, I would move to amend this to strike the word regular, and then it would be correct.
But what's the difference between the next meeting and the next regular?
Well,
meeting?
because you
Next
could have
next
a-
full board meeting, you could add any words you want in there. Next full board meeting, next
No, no,
meeting,
no,
when
no,
it's
no,
snowing. I
no,
mean,
no.
it's the next meeting. I
Jordan,
don't think it's
Jordan,
semantics.
Jordan, don't be
It's
silly.
semantics.
Don't be silly. Look,
I think this is silly,
no, it's
actually.
not.
No, no,
No,
what
I do
is
think it
silly?
is.
No, look
It's
at
not.
last
Look at
last
this
year's
Sign,
calendar.
please,
Yeah.
I'm talking to Tom. Let's
Jordan,
focus on trying to make
You're
some progress
early
here
by
in the
now.
first
You've been-
meetings.
4 years,
Let's move on.
4
Miss-
years.
Ms. Jolly?
You know the difference between a regular and a special meeting, right?
Doesn't say special.
I know it says
Okay.
it specifies in the resolution next. No, I'm sorry. It says in the resolution,
Ms.
next
Jolly, may I have
regular
your vote,
meeting.
please?
So, voting A on yes, yes on I, on A. Yes to B. I'm voting no to C only to allow the for the amendment, for the additional meeting, but that's really the only reason. So we can have an amendment after the vote. Voting yes to D, no to E, yes to F, yes to G, yes to H. We're voting yes to I, J, no to L, yes to M, and abstain from N.
So you have C, E, and L were your nays, and N is abstain. Ms. Khanna?
Yes to A, yes to B, no to C, yes to D, no to E, yes to F, yes to G, yes to H, no to I, yes to J, no to L, yes to M, yes to N.
So I have 5 here, which is C, D, E, I, and L.
I said yes to D. I was a yes on D. I was a no on C, no on E, no on I, and no on L. 4.
Okay, so for now that we do not have C, E. Just hold on a second, C, E, and I believe are not passing. C, E, I, let me see, L. C, E, I, and L are not passing.
I passed. Yeah, I passed.
Okay, so we just have C, E, and L.
Could I have the results of who voted against L?
Who
And
voted against L, you said?
Yes.
Mrs. Akiri? Mrs. Jolly? And Mrs. Kahana, Ms. Kana, I'm sorry.
What,
Those are the 3 that I have for
L.
no's for L.
Oh, I meant to vote no. That's a no from me. L. And I. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. I'm confused here. K is designation, is the transfer authority that I voted no on. Right? And then
That's
L.
correct, yes.
L, let me look at L.
Sorry, can I interrupt? I don't see a K in this version of the agenda. Are we looking at the same agenda?
There is no K, Tom.
It goes from J to L.
All right, just a minute.
I think this is, yeah, just check the version, please.
L is the one I meant. I should have voted no on L. I thought it was, okay, my notes said K, but it's actually L. L is a no.
So, Dr. Forager, you're voting nay to C, E, I, and L.
That's correct.
We got no meetings and no one's getting paid.
I have C, E, and L.
I passed, okay. So people will get paid, okay.
No, we can fix the resolution.
I don't think this is a laughing matter we have serious concerns. We would like this to be amended. We were told we cannot amend the resolution. We have to vote. And that is why we voted this way. So there is no need to, like, if I am not allowed to speak, maybe there shouldn't be any side banter, laughing, asking for the gavel. Thank you.
So C, E, and L did not pass.
What about I? What are the yes votes for I?
1, 2, I
What
have
did you-
3 people that voted no on I, so that would pass.
I would like to make a motion to schedule another meeting so that we can come back to the table and get stuff done for the district since we did not pass our schedule. Do I have a second?
Second.
I think we can deal with this right here because we just amend the resolutions.
I made a motion. I have a second.
Who seconded it?
Mrs. Bradford.
Second.
And what was the motion?
I'd just like to clarify, what is the
To
motion?
schedule another meeting.
We do not currently have a next meeting.
We don't have a schedule.
We also don't have.
Is there an intent to address another alternate schedule or, okay, well, let's,
So.
can we do that?
Sorry, I think we are voting on the motion though, right? Let's be done with this and then we can get to it. Is that the right way?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. So can you repeat the motion one more time? The motion is to,
Schedule another meeting
what
so
date?
we can come
Do you
together.
have a date?
I do not have a date in mind, but I can add one if you would like. I would like to add January 18th for our next meeting
Was there a second
at
to this motion?
6:30.
Okay, then you can't change the motion after it's been seconded.
That's.
Yeah, I agree.
so you can't add January 18th.
The motion's on the table. If we can have another meeting, we can talk about date after the motion either passes or denies if you don't want me to add a date. But we're just getting into technicalities, and I think the public had made it clear that they don't want us doing this, right? Going around in circles about nothing. We have business to get done. We need to do things for our students. We almost handcuffed them to not be able to pay our teachers. It's
Can
It's
we-
extremely sad. And the first vote had a no to the
I
code
call
of
for the
ethics.
Vote.
So I am proud that I stood up and said we should re-vote on these because you guys voted no to the code of ethics.
All
So
right,
yeah,
can
I
we-
would like to move forward with my motion. It's on the
AJ,
table.
can
I have
we-
a second. Can we do roll call?
Thank you. Can we do a roll call?
Mrs. Stanley,
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Mrs. Akiri,
Okay. No, because we can make the amendments today. Thank you.
Dr. Forager,
No.
Mr. Hyman,
No, because I'm hopeful we can get a full calendar approved tonight.
Ms. Jolly,
No.
Ms. Connor,
No.
Mrs. Penna.
I'm hoping that we can accomplish this tonight. I think we need to sort this out so that we can
So is that a
have
no?
our schedule. It was a no.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to amend item C on the agenda, the designation of the annual meeting schedule. Do you want me to give like proposed dates? Is that how we want to do it?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to amend the calendar to include a meeting in February 2024. Include a meeting in June 2024 for the superintendent evaluation completion. And the meeting in February to essentially,
So you want to add dates?
I wanna-
to what's existing already?
yes, okay, with the
Amend
dates that
C.
we have.
And do you have a specific date in mind in February? and in
Yes,
June?
8th of February and 20th of June.
And you said 2/8, there's 4.
Sorry.
You said the date, February 8th is
Yeah.
4.
That is for getting our superintendent search, and if we can do it sooner, that's great. But we need to start the process for the superintendent search. That's the reason we need another meeting between January and February. And the June meeting is, we really need the time for the evaluation.
We don't have a board president. I don't believe we can do the February meeting at all. That makes no sense, but that's just my comment.
I think you have to go out for RFP too, if you're going to use a superintendent search firm. Okay.
Also, we have 2 meetings in June already, so this would be adding a 3rd meeting. And
No, is the motion, did
Also
you make
that-
the motion? So you need a
also,
second, right?
excuse
Yeah.
me,
So-
when I had a motion, you guys spoke, so you gotta have it both ways. So also in June, right, this is a very difficult time for our staff as they are coming to the end of the year. We already have 2 meetings, adding a 3rd, I think we'll be asking way too much of them.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Just want to clarify so that we're voting in these new
Amended.
amended meet, okay.
You're voting now just to amend it and then you would vote to adopt it after it's, if you.
I just want to clear, are these considered regular or special meetings?
If we are adding them today, my understanding is they are regular meetings because AJ did ask for
They would be
specific.
special meetings. They're not, they wouldn't be regular because they're going, we have 1 regular meeting a month is what we currently have. When we deviate from the 1 regular meeting a month, then it's a special meeting. Such as like when we have a board goals, that's a special meeting.
I would like to, with all due respect, our school district used to have multiple meetings in this very Berkeley Heights Public Schools. We used to have multiple meetings every month. And there is no special designation that this, other than other than 1 regular meeting is considered a special meeting, unless this particular interpretation is supported by a bylaw or a policy. I think we are voting to amend the calendar to add 2 regular meetings with a clear intent on what they want to achieve.
So Dipti, I just want to ask one question of AJ. January 18th would be our next meeting if this passes.
Correct.
Is there time to go out for an RFP, or do you want to have that meeting to discuss the superintendent search to get it started and then vote to go out for an RFP? I'm just
Right.
trying to get some
What
sense.
I'm trying to make sure is that we have intentionally put time on the calendar to address something that we know needs time.
Got it.
So, you know.
I was
yeah,
wondering
we
if you were
can-
ready to go out for RFP. I'm like, I wasn't
No,
sure he could get
no,
that all done by
I-
then. Okay, all right.
I
Just
don't
checking.
present, I just want to say, acknowledge the fact that we have work to do. And I feel like the 18th, it just is a lot of time.
I understand. I understand.
I think it's a good idea because I prefer it on a calendar than rather than these last minute special meetings.
Are we able to move forward in a search or an RFP without a board president? Is that something we can even do? Is that anybody know? We'll have to ask the county superintendent.
You'll need to resolve that.
Yes.
In the interim. In the interim, you would need to resolve that issue. Hopefully the county superintendent would act expeditiously to resolve that issue.
So
Yeah.
just for the purposes of this motion, leaving that aside for a minute, the motion here is to add 2 meetings to the calendar.
Is there any conflict with the end of the year with the June 20th meeting?
Hold on, let me look at the date. Here is the week before
Yeah,
graduation.
and
Just clarify,
you specified each of those meetings. The one on February 8th was to start the superintendent search, and the June and 20th was for the superintendent's evaluation.
That's right.
Okay.
And all the other meetings would be fine.
Yeah, the other
Okay.
meetings are fine.
I
It'd
think,
be hard for the staff to pull off 3 meetings in 1 month. But as long as it's a special meeting and it's just executive session, it should be doable. I just don't know. Most people go on vacation that week after school ends. So you're also pulling a week of vacation away from yourselves as well.
So the other, sorry, to that point, when I looked at the June 27th meeting, I don't know how many people would be around given the, how close it is to the 4th of July. So my thought was, we need that time before like 1st of July to get the process done. And it might end up being, to your point, more of an exec session conversation. But the intent here is to make sure that we are not kind of planning at the last moment. That's all.
So my question, sorry, can I have a question? So rather than trying to cram 3 meetings in June, would it be possible to move the June 27th meeting to June 20th instead?
I think we are required by law to do this, the CSA evaluation,
By July 1st.
By July
by
1st.
July 1st.
Yeah.
So basically, the reasoning for the June 20th is instead of doing it so close to July 1st, we as a board will meet and evaluate the superintendent. That's the law. That's a state law.
Correct.
And that is the reason why we are asking for an earlier meeting to do the evaluation so that we are not,
So
hurrying
you're
up.
asking
But
to
my
get
question
rid of
was-
The 27th?
Was rather than try to have 3 meetings in
meetings.
June, which is hard for the staff and everybody and the board members, rather than have the meeting on June 27th, is it possible to move that meeting to June 20th?
Right, so can I make the amendment to the amendment and
That,
say,
in my opinion, would be better.
I like that idea, Angela, instead of 27th, we move it to the 20th.
That's fine. I think that's fine.
I think that would work better.
Yeah.
I can just, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has conflicts. I can't make Feb 8. I'm not opposed to adding a Feb date. I'm away for work, but I'm just throwing it out there. Obviously, I don't know if everyone else has already looked at their schedules, but I do support adding.
I was just trying to, we had this long weekend.
Okay, so right now we have an amendment to February 8th as the superintendent search is what we have, and June 20th for the superintendent evaluation is replacing the June 27th meeting. That is the wording that we have.
But it's not just for the superintendent evaluation. It's your
Yes.
it's your regular meeting. You're going to address the superintendent at your regular meeting.
Regular meeting superintendent evaluation. Okay. All right, and I have the 2 motions. I have Mrs. Khanna was first and Dr. Forager was second. So with that being said, Mrs. Khanna,
Yes, to item C on the motion.
Dr. Forager,
yes.
Mrs. Akiri,
Just a clarification. So we will not have an exec session special meeting for evaluation. So it's 20, so we are only adding 1 meeting to the calendar. Okay. Okay. It's going to be a long meeting. Yes.
Ms. Bradford,
Yes.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Ms. Jolly,
Yes.
Ms. Penna,
Yes.
and Ms. Stanley.
No.
Motion passes.
Now you technically need to vote again on the
Yeah.
calendar. You just amended the calendar.
Right? Nope. I have it. Okay. So now I'm gonna need a motion and a second for the voting of the calendar, item C. Do I have a first?
So moved as amended.
As amended. So we have
Well, because the amendment passed.
Jordan Hyman is the motion. And who was the second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Khanna,
Yes.
Mrs. Akiri,
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mrs. Jolly,
Yes.
Ms. Penna,
Yes.
and Ms. Stanley.
I'm going to vote no because the February 8th meeting without a board president will be a lot on our staff for no apparent reason.
Motion passes. At this moment, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a first? I have a motion and a
So
second.
moved.
Second.
Who was the first?
Pamela Stanley. I was the first.
Oh, wait.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Since we don't have a president, I did want to bring up that at the one point when that president will be appointed, we'll have to include a dedicated item to discuss regarding committees and liaison appointments at that time. So I wanted to make sure we brought that forward. Do we have any new business?
Can I just note, when we have that discussion, I'd like to then, at that point, I'm not making it now, sort of pointless, but would like to ask that our board re-add a mountainside committee, which used to exist, I believe. It was an ad hoc committee. I'm just planting the seed so that when we do get there, it'll be back.
And that was actually the reason why, because of that suggestion, that was the reason why that was put on the agenda tonight.
New
New business.
Yes. Can I speak?
Yes.
So I would like to, I think before I move a motion, I would like to say, I think it's been a concern that our district for the last 5 years has increased legal spending. We have more than doubled from 2018, 2019. So I'm like to make a
That breaks the
discussion.
policy
gonna say, I
where
think
we
we're
have
in
a
violation of our
48-hour
policy.
rule. We
On
have a
the new business.
48-hour rule for new business and you have not used.
I
you
have
Excuse
given-
me, this is not open for the public.
the-
It is not open to the public.
Okay. With all due respect, I did give an advance notice. I did speak with AJ regarding the legal threshold. And I did raise my concerns.
And you
Mrs.
asked to
Jolly,
bring it up in new business with
if I
the
can,
board
can you please not interrupt me?
Let her
Can you
finish.
please not interrupt me?
Just let her
I am
finish.
finishing my sentence
I'm
and I
allowed
think I
to.
have every right to speak it.
No.
In your opinion, thank you. So
Point
all I'm
of
saying-
order,
So all
point
I'm-
of order, point of order. Robert's rules allows point of order without, and I'm allowed to interrupt. It says right here in Robert's rules, yes, I'm allowed to interrupt. Point of order.
You have to be recognized by the speaker first.
So with this concern about board attorney's presence was raised over 48 hours by multiple board members, like by Mrs. Jolly and by me. I did call AJ. We have a concern regarding the legal spending in this district and us going over the legal threshold. So I move a motion to have a board attorney present at our board meetings. Thank you. Can I get a second?
Sorry, would you restate the motion?
The motion is to have a board attorney present at our board meetings.
Yes.
It's 48 hours notice to the board. It's not to AJ. Zero. I don't know.
I move that the motion be postponed indefinitely.
There's a motion on the floor. Thank you.
I'm
According-
allowed to do that. Do I have a second?
According to the bylaw 164, and as we've had here, there's the 48-hour rule, which was just suggested. I'm new to this because I'm not aware of this since it was done I don't know how long ago it was done.
It was done in the lame duck session,
So-
last meeting of
so
December. Yeah.
As we've all alluded to the policy, you would have to bring that up at the next board meeting.
With all due respect, AJ, our current agenda is in violation of a couple of our policies. We have hashed it out. The resolution is in violation of our board policy 0154. So we can't be treating one policy to have power versus another policy.
154, what are we referring to?
I'll read it for you. 154 was basically a resolution, our organizational meeting needed to have readoption of policies and bylaws.
And as I stated earlier, it was done twice, and I was going to look into that matter, and if so, we would vote on it at the next meeting.
Well, all I'm saying is we are not in adherence with some of our own policies, okay? You're going to do research. So in the same way, Mrs. Jolly and me, we were incoming board members. We have put it in writing in an email to Dr. Worley. And it is her responsibility to share it with the board. So we were not on the board to abide by this policy. We were incoming board members. We just got sworn in today. And by your own language, we cannot get activated our board emails before we are sworn in. So how are we supposed to communicate? From our personal email, we did send it to you and to Dr. Worley and Giordano. So it is up to you to circulate it. There's a motion on the floor here. I have a second. I think we need to vote.
I object to the consideration of this question. Do I have a second?
You
Because
cannot
it
have a
does not
second
follow
motion. Yes.
procedure.
Yes.
Yes, you can,
I'm-
according
no.
to Robert's
But
rules.
I'm well beyond with this.
That's
I've-
fine,
I've
but I
never-
think
in
the
all my
board
25
attorney who,
Years of doing this, I've never had
I'm
any of
sorry.
this circumstance ever have done in my career.
we can
And-
vote
and
on
I'm
my
gonna be
motion
a little-
first
I'm
and
gonna
then
be
go
a
to
little
Pam's, okay?
legal-
I will second Pam's. We are in violation of our policy.
Yeah, but that is after my motion. I already have a second. There's a motion on the floor. We
According
need
to
vote.
Robert's rules, I am allowed to interrupt and I can ask for a second, and I
if
need a
I allow you-
2/3 majority to remove the question because it does not follow procedure.
I think we need to vote. We have a motion on the floor and then we can vote on yours in
The
order.
motion
So
is illegal.
I'm sorry, could you clarify the motion again? I heard it, but then we had, yes, could you just,
The motion is to have a board attorney present at every board meeting for Berkeley Heights Public Board of Ed.
Motion to have.
A board attorney
for the
present.
full calendar year? is
Yeah, for the
motion.
full calendar year at every board meeting.
But we have them.
Yeah, she's asking to vote for something we already have.
We already have.
Actually, can I make an amendment to that? Yeah, like.
No, you can't. And
Okay.
I have a motion on the table that's open and I have a second.
Well, do you have a third?
This is.
I need a roll call for that.
Hold, so we have Mrs. Syed Kiri as the motion. I have the second here as Tom Forager.
What was it?
Yours.
With all due respect, Mr. Wenzel, whatever advice you're giving, if you give it to the rest of the board, that would be appreciated.
It is 0164 conduct.
But I objected to the consideration of the
That
question
too,
because
and
of
that
procedure.
too. So we're just going in circles here.
I think the board attorney only works for a couple of board members and not the rest.
So what I'm going to do is going to vote on Mrs. Akiri. Take that vote. I have
A second though,
a second vote from yourself. Let me mark that down.
but
Your-
that's to
your-
cancel the question.
But if I vote no on having no board attorney present,
It wasn't, the motion wasn't to have no board attorney present. It was to have a board attorney
You
present.
have a board attorney present. It's what the motion is,
so if I
which is
vote,
currently what we have.
I was going to say, don't we already?
It's
have
react-
So we wouldn't vote it down if we get 4 votes, we wouldn't vote it down.
Yeah.
Yes. Because we already currently have that situation and our wording is that the board president can appoint counsel to come to the meeting. And since we already have that, and the motion was made to only vote yes for it, we would keep it even if it voted no, the 4,
The thing is,
unless it got a 5th,
we don't have a board president to invite.
He
things.
locked himself out.
because it's already currently
Sorry.
happening.
Well,
It doesn't, there's no violation.
Mhm.
well, actually,
But like I
Candle.
said, I already
I'm sorry.
objected to the
Stick
consideration
handling.
of the question.
okay, we've never actually, there's no power for the board president.
Oh.
So we're just affirming that the board president.
If we vote yes, and it's a 4-4, that's a no.
No, it's not.
And it's a violation of our policy. So if that is what she's proposing and it's a 4-4, it's a no. So That's their way around.
I see what Sy and Tom are saying in this instance, because let's say our next meeting is able to happen on January 18th. We'll start that meeting without a board president. Ideally, we would quickly thereafter have one of two people as the board president. But to have the ability to have a board attorney present for that meeting, that's essentially the spirit of what I think I'm hearing. Is that fair?
No,
It's not what I'm hearing.
no.
Okay.
As I understand,
I don't understand. We have a motion on the floor. We have a second. We have discussed it. I think there needs to be a roll call.
I agree. I
I-
object to
can
the
I just-
consideration of the question.
I
needs
just
to
want
be
a
voted upon.
clarifying question. Angela, when you said we'll be in violation of policy, which policy are you referring to?
If at the bottom of the policy, it says here, do you want me to read the policy? Okay. Absent bona fide emergent circumstances, no item may be placed on the agenda and or raised at the public meeting under old business or new business unless the board members provide at least 48 hours advance written notice of the items he/she desires to discuss or raise during old business or new business to all board members and the superintendent. If an item is raised during old business or new board business with less than required 48 hours notice to the board members and the superintendent, it cannot be considered, motioned, or voted upon at the board meeting.
There was a notice given. There is an email documentation to Dr. Warley.
It's to all board members.
Yes, we were not, so all I'm saying
We
is,
did not
and
all
it also,
receive it.
or superintendent, and it was up to the superintendent to forward it, okay?
I'm gonna say that since you weren't sworn in and this policy has been in effect before you were here,
Yes,
then this would have to wait until the next board meeting.
that is,
That's my interpretation of the
with
matter.
all due respect, I think the policy was voted at the very last board meeting in December 2023. During the lame duck session, the intent was exactly this, to curb the ability of a new board member or any board member to move a motion. I would like to, that is that was in question.
I don't-
We did raise that as a concern. So I have a motion on the floor. If it's in violation of 0164, I would like to know how and why, and I would like to debate it later. Right now, the motion is I move a motion to have a board attorney present at every board meeting for Berkeley Heights Board of Ed. I got a second, and I think with all due respect, we need to move ahead with roll
And
call.
with due respect as well, I'm upholding the policy of what's stated for 164.
Also, Robert's Rules of Order say that you cannot do that. You cannot make a motion without consulting the board prior. Also, according to our own ethics that we now voted yes on, you have to refer all complaints to the chief administrative officer and will act on those complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administration solution. And like I said, I have a motion on the table to object to the consideration of the question with a second, because it does not follow procedure or policy.
Who was the second that we had for you?
Angela.
I seconded Pam's.
No, but first motion was mine, and I got a second from Dr. Forager. So I think if we're going to vote, it needs to go in order.
However, Robert's Rules allows for this, and so I made a motion to strike your motion.
Since it's in violation of
Since we're in
the bylaw of 164.
Tell me the specific thing from Robert's Rules. I have the book here. You can just tell me where it is. Is it to postpone or what?
26, avoid main motion altogether.
What is concerning is we are treating some policies have more power versus new policy changes that were done in lame duck session. And I can argue that two incoming board members writing to the board president, the board secretary, and to the superintendent, and there were other board members copied on that email. So that is advance notice. If you are going to say no, under which interpretation, we can debate that. But I think this motion is on the floor and you need to vote on that.
It says to all board members and the superintendent.
And you were not a board member at the time. You
So
were
this
elected
doesn't
at-
apply. So if you're going to interpret that, then it doesn't apply. If it is to all, I was not a board member, then the policy doesn't even apply.
It applies now. 'Cause you
Yeah, and
are
I
a board
already,
member.
yeah.
Policy wasn't done in lame session. That was done before I was.
No,
here.
Yes,
the
that was it.
policy
I-
got a
There's more
second,
information
no,
by
the
the
second
secretary.
reading. To approve any policy, you need a second reading. When was this policy approved? Can you look at the date? It was December 2023.
It doesn't, it was approved. It was approved before I've been here.
It during the lame duck session.
No.
No, it
That's
wasn't.
What is the
inaccurate.
date of the approval on the, what was the date that was, I know the meeting date. Look on the policy,
In 2023?
December, what is the date?
In December, second reading
Okay.
was December.
Second
Second
reading
reading was
was
December.
during the lame duck session.
It doesn't,
Yes.
it doesn't make it non-effective. Not a
See, I am
policy in
willing,
effect.
okay, with all due respect, we have an attorney here. We have a difference of opinion on interpretation of policy. I am willing to let this motion, which according to Robert's Rules of Order, be voted on. And if I'm in violation of 0164, I would like to know what are the, how is it executed?
I call
Because
for
at
point of
for-
order.
At this point, nobody in this district knows what is a violation of a policy. So I would like to vote on this and then you can proceed with, okay, this is an,
I need to defer to counsel on this because this is, I'm not a legal opinion advisor on this. I'm a board secretary and the things that I've seen here tonight, I've never seen in my 25 years, 26 years of doing this job.
AJ, just,
I've never
sorry,
seen- I've
talking
never
about
seen a
Mr.
stalemate
Carey.
like
Point-
this.
I
Think
guess
of it
point
as
of
the
order,
think
can
of it
we-
as, AJ, think of it as the experience of a lifetime.
Yes.
and I will, I think we have to vote on this. There's a motion with a second.
I agree.
Can we?
Can we just do the vote? Can we
Yeah.
just do that? Vote on Pamela's motion, vote on Sai's motion, and whichever is the right order.
So,
Yeah. It doesn't.
again, like clarification, that yes or no, if a next meeting were to happen on January 18th, does a yes vote and or a no vote allow for an attorney to be present? Or is it one of the other?
Just my understanding with regard to your policy 164, whether it was approved at a second reading in a lame duck session or not, does not make it any less operable a policy as we sit here today. And so for your board secretary's interpretation, number one, I don't know if a request to add it to new business was made 48 hours in advance, but but this is a reorganization meeting. You're scheduled to have another meeting in 2 weeks. And per your policy 164, you state in that policy, that bylaw, that it cannot be raised and voted upon at a meeting on the spot, which appears to be what's happening here right now, which appears to be the reason why that language was added to the policy, so that Mr. Juskowitz, who hasn't seen anything like this in 25 years of being a board secretary, stops happening.
With all due respect, Mr. Wenzel, I have a basic question to ask you. If you're acting as a board attorney, are you also acting in my behalf while you are also pursuing other stuff against me? So I don't, with all due respect, this advice, I would like to ignore it. According to Robert's Rules of Order, there is a motion, I got a second, and I think it needs to be voted on.
My firm represents the board, not any individual board member.
Okay,
Can-
thank you.
Sorry, can we just vote on the motion and figure out what?
Illegal. No, it's an invalid.
against
I thought we were voting on your motion, I thought.
Invalid motion is what the attorney just said.
Sorry.
That is,
I don't-
that
so-
is, that is what Ms. Stanley is saying as well, because it's, to move forward with this is in violation of the policy, the bylaw.
So, okay, I want to go back to the beginning of the meeting where we established that we were not in compliance. The agenda for this meeting is not in compliance with policy 154. And we
I've
called it
stated-
ceremonial and whatever, right? We used words around it. We are now talking about a different policy. What I'm trying to just establish here is that if Pamela has a motion on the table, are we going to vote on it? If not, then are we going to vote on motion that Sai,
The point that she's making is that what she, well, it might, exactly, the motion shouldn't be voted on because it's against the bylaw.
Pamela's motion
so let's.
was to
let's-
not vote, was to
Right,
make
so-
an amendment
So
to not
let's
vote. on
vote
it.
on Pamela's motion, right? Isn't that the right thing to do here?
Not if we can't vote on the original motion. We can't even vote on the second thing that I am asking
Because the
for.
point that she's
Because
making is that it's in violation of the bylaw.
So you put it on for new business for the next meeting in 2 weeks.
That is what I stated earlier as well. Since we have no board president either,
Okay.
or committees for that.
So in 2
instance.
weeks, are we going to be voting to readopt bylaws and policies. Is that
I
right?
would hope so, but first we have to get through from A to B and getting the county superintendent to get a board president in here first with the vice president.
No,
And
you
then,
can,
then
you-
we
all
need
we
to
need
start
is a
making
chairman of the
decisions going
meeting, right?
forward, because we seem to be
Correct,
going around
correct,
the
Dr.
circle.
Forager.
Yeah, we just need a chairman of the meeting.
So if that's possible, if at the next meeting, 5 of you can agree on a chairman of the meeting, you can have your meeting. If the county superintendent doesn't act first,
Doesn't Anthony step up to the plate here?
not at the second meeting, the next
No?
the next meeting per your bylaw, you have to, 5 of you agree upon a temporary chair. Anthony will start the meeting and then hold a vote, and you will vote amongst yourselves to designate a temporary presiding officer of that meeting.
Could we have the board secretary be the temporary presiding officer?
Not what I've been able to find thus far in terms of authority. My interpretation is you vote and you elect a temporary
There
chair
has been-
for that meeting only.
So
So-
there has been precedence that Donna Felizola acted as, the previous board secretary did act as the chairman for the meeting.
So then if we,
I think she was talking about this meeting though, not the second.
well, this meeting, the reorg meeting for
No,
sure.
They were second meetings. You can go and check it. But at this moment, I would like to go back to my motion, which is on the floor. And I would like to vote on that because it got a second.
It has to be denied
Been
due to the
denied.
fact of the bylaw.
Denied.
to
And
adjourn.
and to have it brought up again at the next meeting, as we just stated.
I move to
Under
adjourn.
which, under which policy or which authority are you denying?
164.
No. Bylaw of 164 asks for a 48-hour rule. You are denying a motion that is on the floor to go for a vote. You're
That is
so
correct, because it's in violation of that bylaw.
It's pursuant to the language of the bylaw. The bylaw states it.
so so you cannot have that. That's the point. You're reviewing 0154 with a different power versus 0164, which was voted during the lame duck session. And I'm saying, with all due respect, you're a board secretary, you represent the entire board. If you're going to view one board policy with a certain weight and say, I'm going to research and get back to you, then maybe you need to research this too. This policy doesn't prevent a motion that's on the floor that has got a second vote to go from vote. You could-
It does. It clearly states that in there. And that,
If
like
it does, no, it needs to go for a roll call. And if you want to get it decided, you can go to New Jersey's Department of Ed and go to conflicts and resolutions and ask them to look at it. I think we need to vote on this. You can provide your detail, your supporting information that this particular
give a
vote
second
needs
to
to be invalidated, and let the New Jersey Department of Ed tell us that.
then I will do that. Right now, I'm going to dismiss that motion based on that bylaw.
On which bylaw? That bylaw doesn't give you the power to dismiss the motion. That's on the floor. That bylaw only talks about a 48-hour rule.
Oh, I know.
Can we, is there a way to table this motion till the next meeting?
That was the suggestion. That was the suggestion.
I think, well, I thought the suggestion was to squash the motion. No,
No.
I'm suggesting for table the motion.
So Anthony suggested that we table the motion to the next
Sorry,
meeting.
I missed that.
No motion.
We haven't done a motion to that. That was my suggestion.
Okay.
That was a suggestion. We haven't got
No,
there
but
yet.
so, but
And,
Dave-
and as the last paragraph of 160 of the bylaw 164, conduct of a board meeting, absent bona fide emergent circumstances, no item may be placed on the agenda and or raised at the public meeting under old business or new business unless the board member has provided at least 48 hours advance written notice of the items he or she desires to discuss or raise during old business or new business to all board members and the superintendent. If an item is raised during old business or new business with less than the required 48-hour notice to all board members and the superintendent, the items cannot be considered motioned or voted upon at that board meeting.
So you've actually solved the problem. It says absent emergent circumstances, but we have an emergent circumstance here because we don't have a board president to invite you to the meeting. We need this thing to say you can come.
My
right?
decision is final at this point.
No, but mine isn't. I'm saying there's an emergent circumstance, so you can actually consider this.
this is emergent circumstances.
This is not an emergent circumstance.
So can we make a motion to table and then? I
No,
guess-
first we need to vote on the current motion that's on the floor. And then if it is in violation,
Um,
So I would like to make a motion to table it. Would
that's
you like
what-
to second it?
That's, yes, so that's what I would like. Let's make a motion to table. I will second it.
Second it.
Angela is the one making the motion. I'm the one who's seconding it.
To table this until the next meeting.
No, but this is not in the order, Dipti. I'm sorry. These are emergent circumstances. You have a second by Dr. Forager, and if this vote has to be invalidated, AJ is within his right to reach out to the Department of Ed and say, this is in violation, these are not emergent circumstances, and then do that. The first motion
I'm
was,
going to uphold that. We're going to make a motion
I
to
agree
bring
with
this up
that.
at the next board
We-
meeting so we can conclude this meeting because
And any
this
business.
meeting will go on till 12 o'clock tonight and we're going around in circles to discuss this.
no, wait, just vote, and you don't have to go in circles, just vote, and then you,
There's
no,
nothing to vote on
why?
due to the fact of the policy.
No,
And
that
that's
is your
what I've been hearing.
interpretation, with all due respect.
We have a motion to table. Let's table it. Is the
This
suggestion
is
here.
great use of taxpayer dollars where we have an attorney who's taking sides and whispering in certain board members' ears and superintendent. This is the advice we get. This is great.
It is costing.
He's
us
not
money.
taking sides. We're trying to be respectful of people's time. We've been here a long time and the motion is to table it.
Who did
and
Mr.
bring it up at the
Mr.
next
Wenzel
meeting.
go and
So,
talk to? Did I listen to his
um,
advice that he was giving Dr. Worley and Pamela
Can-
and to AJ? I
we-
didn't
can
hear
we
his
take
advice.
5? Can we just take 5? Just take 5. Take 5 at 9:45.
No, I am calm, Dipti. There is no, all I'm saying is I respect his interpretation. If this, let it go for a vote. If it fails, it fails. If it passes, it passes. And then if he has a problem, like how he's going to research on the other policies, he can go and he's entitled to do that. We have one legal firm, we have an alternate legal firm, they can all research it and come back to us. If this motion at the next meeting says that this motion was not valid and it was not supposed to be done this way, I'm fine with that.
We're done. We're gonna table this for a motion for a new business, correct? You made the motion?
It's been seconded.
I made the
It's been
motion.
seconded?
I made the motion.
Angela made the
Seconded.
motion, I
and Dipti
seconded it.
Can we vote, please?
I can't hear you, Dr. Forager.
A motion to
Okay.
table takes
G was
2/3.
second. EK was
Okay.
the motion. Okay. Mrs. Khanna,
This is the motion to table.
yes, that is correct.
Yes, yes.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Mrs. Stanley?
No.
Miss Jolly,
Yes.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Ms. Bradford,
Yes.
and Ms. Akiri.
No.
Motion passes. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
I just hope we don't have a board attorney attending because there is no board president to invite a board attorney at the discretion of their power. Thank you.
Have we adjourned?
Yes.
Have we adjourned?
voted.
We haven't voted.
Aye.
All
Aye.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Your stuff to, Anthony.
That's a violation of